like to open the September 9th board meeting of the Single Family Design Review Board. May we take roll call, please?
Board Member Bernstein? Board Member Miller?
Here.
Board Member James?
Here.
Board Member Pierce? Board Member Zimmerman?
Here.
Vice Chair Sweeney?
Here.
And Chair Woolery.
All right, I'd like to welcome all of you to today's meeting. Just so you know ahead of time, if there's anyone that wants to speak to an item on the agenda, you can fill out a orange, yellow, whatever that gold color paper over there that's on the clipboard and just hand it to the secretary here on the left. At this point, we would open any public comment for any member of the public who would like to address the Single Family Design Board for up to 2 minutes on any subject within their jurisdiction that is not scheduled for public discussion before the board on that day. Anyone coming forward? Saying no, we will close public comment. The chair request calls for a motion on approval of the minutes of the August 26th meeting.
So moved.
Do I have a second? Let us go through that agenda.
Jamie's on the way.
Jamie's on the way?
Yeah.
Okay. So, were there any comments on item number 1, 521 Santa Barbara Street? Any comments on item number 2, 616 East Valerio Street? Item 3, 2430 Calle Alamante. 438 Conejo Road. Item 5, 1727 Santa Barbara Street. Item 6, 1565 La Coronilla Drive. Hearing no comments, the chair calls for approval. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed? Any abstentions? So carried. First was Brian, and second was Jim. Okay. Let's see. Then we have a consent calendar for September 3rd. Do I have a motion for approval?
I move.
Do I have a second? Second, Jim. Michelle, would you like to review those, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. The consent agenda for Tuesday, September 3rd, 2013. Item A, 734 Sea Ranch Drive, was granted final approval as submitted of the review after final. Item B, 616 East Valerio Street, was granted final approval as submitted. Item C, 521 Santa Barbara Street, was granted final approval with notes. Item D, 1607 Shoreline Drive, was granted project design approval with the MPO findings and continued indefinitely to consent. The items were reviewed by Brian Miller and Lisa James.
Okay. Any comments by board members? Hearing none, chair calls for question. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? So carried. Let's go to this morning's consent calendar, September 9th, please.
We have a first and a second.
Yes, may I have a motion for approval?
I'll move to approve.
Okay, we have Lisa, and we have a second by Brian. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Consent agenda for today, Monday, September 9th, 2013. Item A, 939 Alita Lane, was granted project design approval with the MPO findings and final approval as submitted. Item B, 1291 West Mountain Drive. This item will be referred to the full board today during, in conjunction with the addition that's also proposed on the full board agenda today.
Okay.
Item C, 2510 Mesa School Lane, was granted project design approval with the MPO findings and final approval with conditions. Item D, 265 Conejo Road is continued indefinitely to the staff hearing officer and to return indefinitely to consent. Item E, 1218 East Delaguerra Street was granted project design approval with the MPO findings and final approval as submitted. Item F, 1702 La Vista del Luciano Drive was granted approval as submitted of the review after final. Item G, 3232 Campanile Drive was granted project design approval with the MPO findings and final approval as submitted. And item H, 1207 Portezuelo Avenue was granted project design approval with MPO and final approval as submitted. Items were reviewed by Brian Miller and Lisa James.
Thank you.
Today's
Any comments, changes? Consent calendar, chair calls for the question. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? So carried. We're on to announcements. One question I have, will any members of our board be stepping down for any reason today on any item?
Yes, Chairman, I will be stepping down on item number Marina Drive.
3435 Marina
Yes,
Drive?
Item number 5. I will be-
Okay, and your purpose, reason for stepping down?
Conflict of interest?
Okay.
And ditto.
And so you'll be stepping down on 3435? Okay, conflict of interest. And just so the public understands, I believe there's an item on today that is a project represented by a member of our panel. He'll be stepping down. There is a notice we're required to read by state law, so we'll share that with when we get to it. And then I go to staff. Any further announcements, Michelle?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a couple announcements. Denise Woolery, Chair, will be absent from today's meeting. Member Bernie Bernstein will be late from today's meeting. She will also be recusing herself from item 1 of this agenda.
Okay. Right?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mr. Ramon.
yes, I wanted to announce that because we're going to have some types of absences in the month of October, staff was concerned enough to try to entertain the idea of changing the actual quorum requirements to allow the board to function without the 2 required architects. And the purpose of that is twofold. One, it would allow us not to cancel or postpone meetings when we have some absences. And secondly, the ABR's actual requirements are only require 1 architect. So
Okay.
for some reason, we developed in 2002 a more restrictive requirement for 2 to be present. So I've checked with the chair and vice chair, and they appear to be supportive. I've also checked with the council and the mayor, and they would like to hear your official support for that change. So we're going to agendize this in the very near future, and you can see the proposed language change and hopefully send some type of a directive up to council. Secondly, I believe state law does allow unlicensed persons to propose designs here, so it's not as critical, I believe, to have that many architects reviewing the plan. So I believe it pretty well functions when we have some of the architects away. And then lastly, we do want to be able to not postpone meetings. I mean, that ultimately the best customer service is not to have a meeting postponed because it would be 4 weeks between full board meetings. So I am going to ask if we could adjust if for some reason, I believe Mr. Zimmerman and Mr. Sweeney will be gone on October 7th.
Yes.
That's tentatively sort of the idea that both of you would not be present. So hopefully we can maybe change for the 15th. I didn't know Mr. Sweeney would be here for the 15th following
Should be back
Tuesday.
by the 15th, yes.
And maybe have that as a substitute meeting so we wouldn't have 4 weeks. We'd have 3 weeks, but at least we would have not a build-up for the following meeting.
Okay.
But it would be a back-to-back and a Tuesday meeting, the 15th. So I wanted to hear from all of you if you're available for that date, for that special meeting. If not, we may have to do something more drastic at council to change the quorum requirements sooner. So I don't know if that would be, you can get back to Michelle or I if you don't have your calendars, and we'll follow up on that.
Okay, thank you. Anything further for announcements? Okay. Hearing none, we have no subcommittee reports at this point, so I'd like to then go to item number 1. Mr. Manson-Hing, you're here to represent the AIA.
Yes, thank you. My name is Christopher Manson-Hing, Vice President, AIA Santa Barbara, and I'm here to introduce this year's Architect Tours, which is this year's version of a tour that we hold every year of architecturally relevant projects inside and outside of the city, but within our domain. This particular year, we're focusing on urban living in Santa Barbara, and I will take you to let's see here. So, what we have here are 12 projects going from single-family residences to multifamily residences to commercial and one educational building. And it gives a variety of what the living experience is in downtown Santa Barbara. I will flow through some photographs for you of these projects to give you a flavor of what you're going to see on the tour. And later on this month, we would have liked to come back, but your agenda being full, I'll just let you know that this project will also have bike routes, associations with restaurants, and promotions that restaurants will give, which is also part of the tour. But let's go through the projects now, and let's start with this one here, which is this is a Spanish colonial in the city, and this is one of the small single-family residences. And I may be going a little quickly here, but there are a lot of 12 projects, and I'd like you to get a flavor of all of them. It has some very special interiors for such a small residence. Could we get these lights able to go off? So that light there in particular in front of the screen that might help with the, yeah, okay. And so that's that one. There is a craftsman that will be on there. I'll pass that one to move on to some others now. Just this is a historic adobe that is in town, and apparently this adobe was once connected to the nationally landmarked Gonzales Ramirez adobe, and it was remodeled by Luther Maria Riggs at one time. So I think it's quite a, we don't have a lot of photographs of this one, but it's on the tour, and it, you know, I think it's something that was quite significant. Let's see. This project on Carrillo Street, it has been on the tour about 2 years ago, but it's a significant single-family residence, and downtown Carrillo is pretty well, everybody associates that with a commercial street, but here's a single-family residence that has been very, very successful. Quite on the modern side. Let's see. Okay. And you may have seen this one, which is the Victoria Muse project. And this one here is, of course, there is an older building to the front, to the street front here, and this is the building in the back, which houses a living unit on 2 levels here. And the garden is then shared between this building and the one in the front. So it's been quite well received, and it's a LEED Platinum building, actually. So then we go on to multifamily residences here, and this is Casa del Fuentes, the corner of Castillo and Carrillo. And this is a very successful project. It's totally filled with clients, and it has a unique concept where there is less parking than one for each unit, whereby they focus on people who will do work in the downtown area and walk to work. So they were able to get high density in a project like this. In that same style, these are recently completed Bradley Studios, and this is on Lower Bath Street. Just completed, and again, this has been a very successful project there. Then there is the El Carrillo, and that's again on Carrillo Street. This is actually very close to Casa de los Fuentes. And then the one project that we have that is outside of the city itself, we just decided to put this in because it's multifamily residence. Actually, it's not family, that this is really student housing, but it's student housing and commercial all blended into one, and it's really making that area of Isla Vista very, very vibrant. So it has the flavor of what downtown living would be like, urban living, and so we thought it would be a significant project to add here. I think that's it there. Now we go on to, this is in the Funk Zone area. Again, this is now condominiums upstairs, commercial downstairs. There are 2 projects in the Funk Zone that are featured in the tour, and they are really enlivening this area of the city. At the end of the tour, at the end of the evening, there is also a after-tour party that will be held at the last site, and I'll show that to you in a while here. So, and then the last project that we have, actually this one, this is not the last, but this is Antioch University, which also was recently done. And this is the one educational project that we have.
Excuse me.
It's a hop, skip, and away from the Funk Zone. And then the last one is this one. This is the pre-construction drawings, and we will have in the next presentations the construction drawings. Actually, it's all finished. It's actually all in operation now, vibrant in the Funk Zone. If you go down into that area right now, there are wine tasting. There's restaurants, there's beer tasting, and this project takes up a whole project. The Lock Restaurant, which is a part of this project, and this environment was just featured in Santa Barbara Magazine, and they had this little editorial on how it's making that part of the city very vibrant. So that's really the preview of all of the projects. There's a lot more information that will come closer to the tour date, which is in October 5th, which is the tour date. And I'd like to ask if you had any questions at this point that you may have.
Questions by anybody? Brian?
Sorry?
Will it be as it's been in previous years where you're on a bus going from place to place, or will you be able to visit individual?
No, this tour, we really wanted to focus it in the downtown area so that people can walk, bike, they can drive if they wanted to, especially if you want to go to the loop out in Isla Vista, which is the only one out. But all the others are in the downtown area. If you are walking, you will have to be pretty quick and efficient in getting to all the places. I think the bikers really would have they're probably the best mode of transportation efficiency-wise. But it's all very accessible in the downtown area. And especially if you see the projects up in one area of town and then move to the next projects, a different part of town, and then get down to the funk zone at the end, it should work out really well for you. Yeah.
So is
Go ahead, Brian.
there something you're going to register and?
There's tickets, and if you go to aiasp.com, everything is available there for you. You can sign up, you can buy your tickets, you can look at the different projects. There's a lot of information there. Or you can call the AIASB office that is on 229 East Victoria Street, and you'll get all the information you need.
Very good.
Yeah, October 5th.
Great. Looks
Yeah.
like it's super.
Well, thanks very much for having me. And
Just one question.
Thank you, Mr.
yep,
Lamont.
sorry.
I just would like to make a plug that for design review, if for some reason, if you give more information about the tour to identify that the review boards that approve the project, because it is a collaboration, and not only the architects designing, but having our review boards collaborate with these designs.
Yes.
So the year they got approved, that would be helpful, I think, to know which board approved it.
That sounds good. I mean, all of these projects, with probably the exception of the loop out in Goleta, have all come through single-family design board or the ABR here, Santa Barbara, our ABR. So
It's almost like a post-construction evaluation. They can also pat themselves on the back to see how well it turned out.
But exactly. I mean, this is the success. I mean, the fact that we have them on the tour and the fact that we want to showcase these projects, they've all come about because they've gone through this process.
Very good.
Good. Thank you.
Thanks very
Forward
much.
to it.
Okay,
All right. Thank you for coming in.
thank you.
If we can have the lights on, can somebody push those lights? I think we're now going to go to, where are we at? I'm in the right minutes. There we go. Item number 2, 2345 Edgewater Drive. Before we begin that project, I understand we have 2 of our board members that have an issue. Bernie, are you stepping down?
I'm stepping down.
And your reason is?
I live too close to it,
Okay.
but I wondered if I could speak as a member of the public, so.
You're allowed to speak as
Okay.
member of public, so if you'll excuse yourself and go to the audience, then you can do that. And you'll need to fill out a slip, please. Before we hear from the applicant, and I suspect there's several people here that would like to talk to this project, we're going to do a couple of things. One is I'll explain the process for those that you may not be familiar with the process. What typically happens is there will be a comment from the staff giving us background on the project. Then we'll ask the applicant and the applicant's designer to present us the project. And then at that point, we will open it to the public for their comments. That public will then, opening comment area will be closed, and then it will come back to the board for the board's questions. Then the applicant can respond to those questions. And then we'll close that piece, and then we go to comments. by the board, and every board member will have a chance to make comments. And then, depending on the action requested, there will be a motion at the end of that activity. Since this is, I believe, a new project coming to us, the form of the motion at the end, I suspect, will be comments. Whoops, am I reading the right one? Yes. Comments only, because it requires more process through the city process. It will require some planning commission review, coastal development permit, et cetera. So this is the first of a few public hearings on this particular application. So if you wish to speak to this item, please fill out one of the gold color forms on the clipboard over there and hand it in to the staff here on the left. That'll allow us to proceed in an orderly fashion. When your name is called, you'll be able to come up. You'll please state your name and your address for the record, and then you have 2 minutes to provide us with your comments. The other thing that you should be aware of, just to allay any suspicion, this board has not seen this project. The first moment we have seen this project is right now. We haven't seen the drawings. We haven't heard from the applicant. All of us are, we do due diligence before this meeting. We go out to the job site. I was out there yesterday. We don't enter on anybody's private property, so we look at it from the public way, public right-of-ways, unless we're given permission to do so. So I'm hoping that most of the board members got out to see this property. But just to emphasize, this is the first time we're looking at this set of drawings, so we haven't seen it. And the comments and questions we'll be making today will be a result of looking at this for the very first time. Now, having said all of that, before we proceed, unfortunately, we received a slew of letters about 15 minutes ago. So I'm going to recess our meeting for about 5 minutes to allow our board members to at least have a few minutes to review these letters, short of having to sit here and read them into the record. So we're going to adjourn for 5 minutes, take some moments to read the letters, and then we'll come back. meeting, please. I have one request of staff
Yes.
before we start. While we're proceeding with the rest of this, would you please see if you can retrieve for us, maybe I have it here in this binder, page 5D of the Single Family Design Board Guidelines, please?
The residential guidelines?
Your residential guidelines about the term compatibility. We could please have that piece of information. Thank you. Okay, we'll now proceed.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, ma'am.
Before the applicant presents the project, I'd like to give a brief project summary and history. Project is before you today for a conceptual review. The project, due to the location in the Hillside Design District and in the appealable jurisdiction of the coastal zone, it will require Planning Commission review for a coastal development permit. So today's a concept review only for no action, comments only. Also, just so you know, there's been some questions brought up by the public regarding the potential historic nature of the lot, and I just wanted to state on the record that our urban historian, Nicole Hernandez, has researched the parcel and the existing properties on site and has found that they were not constructed, the original structures there were not developed by any architect of note. There's been several additions and alterations over the years, so the existing structures are not deemed historic or significant in any way, so therefore they can be demolished without a historic structures report. Also, in addition, there's been some question brought up regarding the FAR, and I just want to clarify for the record, for the public, for the board, that the FAR is a tool, an analysis tool. Simply, it's a guideline. It's a guideline for projects on lots that are developed on a lot that's greater than 15,000 square feet. The lot size is determined by legal record by the county assessor. The FAR is for blufftop properties, is not dinged in any way because it's on a blufftop property. The FAR accounts for the entire property limits. So even if the parcel is 20,000 square feet, it's still considered a guideline because it's greater than 15,000 square feet per the legal county assessor record. And it's also, the FAR calculation is done on the total county assessor area. Therefore,
So if I may, Michelle,
yes,
essentially what that means is the property is counted all the way to the bottom of the bluff in most of the cases of these houses that face that bluff.
exactly,
So
yes.
the land goes all the way to the bottom of the bluff, irregardless of the other rules and regulations that limit where a house can be built on that site at the edge of the bluff. There is a distance
Yes,
requirement,
exactly.
correct?
Exactly. And there are, as you mentioned, other rules and regulations involved that regulate where a house can be built. For instance, as stated before, this will go to the Planning Commission for a coastal development permit. There are regulations as part of the Coastal Policy Act that, such as there's a 75-year setback retreat line. So those all take into play for regards of the proposed development, where it's most appropriate to develop on the lot in regards to a coastal development permit. And that jurisdiction is before the Planning Commission, not this board, not at this time, not at this review. The FAR, going back to the FAR, it is an analysis tool. It's used only as a tool. Of course, we understand that the FAR in this case includes developable, non-developable area of the lot that goes down the bluff side. So in this case, the board would consider that an apparent FAR. The FAR is again a tool. The discretion is before the board. This project today, it's 60% of a guideline FAR. That's what it is. There will be no penalties for this lot being on a coastal bluff top.
Okay. Then I have two more questions, Michelle. First of all, there is, in reading the letters, there's some allusion that this house may have been a Moody Sisters design, and apparently our historian has determined that's not the case. That's correct?
That is true. Our historian has determined that is not the case.
Okay. And it's my understanding that consideration for historic designation centers around two possible components. One is the architecture itself. Has it been designed or created by a noted architect of note that's significant to Santa Barbara? and/or was it occupied or owned by someone of historic stature? There was some allusion to a music group that may have rehearsed in this house. So the historian, I'm assuming, did look at that and determined that that wasn't significant enough?
My knowledge is that the urban historian has researched all aspects of the property and has determined that it is not eligible to be historic for any reason.
Okay, thank you. Having heard that, one other question, Michelle. As we read these letters, several of these appear to be emails and letters, so we don't have any way to know where these folks live in relationship to the site, correct? There are a few that the addresses are identified.
Exactly. If they didn't provide it, we don't know.
So they could be from any citizen within the community?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let's go to our applicant and our architect. If you introduce yourselves, please.
Yes, I'm Jim Zimmerman,
And I need to
architect.
read that. Excuse me, I'm sorry, John. I need to read that somewhere. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm the architect for Mr. Smolsky and his family. Mr. Smolsky lives in San Francisco, and he's very familiar with Santa Barbara and the area. And he plans on moving here with his family when his residence is finished. And what he liked about Santa Barbara is the Mediterranean and the Spanish feeling. And that's the reason for going with the Mediterranean design.
Okay. Can I stop you just there for a second? Will you introduce yourself, please?
Sure. Chris Gilliland with Common Ground. I'm the landscape architect on the project.
Thank you. I neglected to read the required statement on this particular item. The State Fair Political Practices Act, Regulation 18702.4, paragraph B, subsection 5 states that an official may appear before a design or architectural review committee of which he or she is a member to present, explain architectural or engineering drawings which the official has prepared for a client. Jim Zimmerman is a sole practitioner and is using this exception, understanding certain limits regarding his advocating on behalf of his client. So I appreciate that. I do have one more question of staff before we start. Where'd she go? Oh, she left. No. Michelle. I personally have made this comment at several board meetings, and I want to make sure I'm correct. This board does not have the purview to deny an applicant a second floor. Is that correct?
That is correct. There's also the board's purview, though, is to determine whether a two-story house is appropriate for the neighborhood. So there may be in cases where a proposal conforms to the design guidelines, it conforms to zoning standards. However, the board, in attempting to make the neighborhood compatibility findings, would state that a second story is not appropriate for the lot or for the neighborhood.
Okay, thank you. All right, sorry. Mr. Zimmerman, proceed, please.
Well, let's start with the existing site plan. This marked area here is the existing house. And the geologist determined that the structural setback is 35 feet. And the lot itself is 50 feet. So the only portion that we're allowed to build on is from here to the street.
From this line here.
That's correct. And that's anything from here to south to the ocean is you're not allowed to do anything in it. You're not allowed to remodel the house. You're not allowed to add on to the house. So structurally, you're limited on not doing anything in this area. So we had the situation where this is the area that we have to build in. this is the existing house, and this dashed line is the structural setback. So anything beyond that line, you're not able to remodel or add on to. So it puts us in a situation where we really need to demo the house and rebuild in the location further toward the street. So this is the location here. We conform to all the setbacks and all the heights that the city allows. Right now, the whole front area is gravel, and I'll show you the first floor plan where we enter a small courtyard and with some very nice landscaping in the front. Just to make you aware of the city walkway that goes down the steps to the beach. So this is the driveway from the property line from the street, and then there's an additional city right-of-way at this area. And you enter an entry courtyard, which I think gives a really special feeling to the house as you come into the house. I want you to observe the sizes of the rooms are very small. The great room, you can see the furniture layout is not overly large at all. Then you have the eating area and the kitchen. And a very small bedroom. So we're not adding a lot of square footage.
Keep going, I'm sorry.
Overly large rooms. So as you come in, to get upstairs, you go around. We didn't want to make curved steps going around because they're very difficult to navigate. So we're curving here and then coming up to a balcony that looks back down into the entry. And from there you enter a bedroom which has a bath. You have a master bedroom here, wardrobe, and a bedroom over the garage. I think the curved iron wrought balcony here gives a really nice feeling to the Mediterranean feel of the front elevation. So this is the garden wall with an arched door going into the small courtyard, and I think it's an opportunity to really be able to add some filigree to the top of the wall, some nice Mediterranean detailing with a small fountain. With that below, the iron wrought railing, this will be a plastered arch or ellipse going around with the iron wrought railing itself. The tower with the stairs going up is 25 feet to the ridge. Nothing exceeds 25 feet. Other portions of the house, I think 22 feet in the front. And then we have 23 feet to the major portion of the ridge. So this is on the east elevation. I broke up the elevation with some shed roofs to break up the two-story feel. And this portion here is actually the back deck area. So to provide additional on the neighbor for someone standing there, I curved the wall down here, so it provides their privacy. I have photographs also of the neighbor, and I talked to her several times, and I'll show you what you'd see from the deck itself. So this is the front portion. This is a structural setback, and then all this area here, you're not allowed to build anything. You're not allowed to build walls, lay brick, anything that would cause the landslide situation. So I'd like to show you some photographs. You have two sets here, So this is the north elevation. This is the front of the existing house. The east is the two-story portion with a steep pitch roof. On working with the neighbor, I took a photograph standing on the balcony looking into the neighbor's property. And you can't really see their house.
Which way is that?
It would be right in here.
And on the site plan?
That'd be east side.
So that's that way.
Yeah.
Okay.
So she has, I feel, complete privacy from even seeing the house, even seeing the two-story house. So we go to this is the view of the backyard, and we'll probably have to be removing a lot of this brick area. This is the north elevation, and the front of the house would be the south elevation. This is a street view across the street. There's a fence area that runs across. Actually, this is the view looking into our piece of property. This is a chain link fence that's going to be removed. Now, across the street, we have a small house here with a high fence in the front, and another house here with the parking area here. I found that in most areas, on most of the sites, they don't have a garage, or the garage has been converted. And what happens is there's a lot of parked a lot of cars parked on the street. So you end up with some high fences in the front, and in some cases you can't see the house. This is the view standing on the balcony, looking into the adjacent property, and this is the house right here. So this is just completely covered with trees and landscaping.
Is this
Now-
the beach right away? Or in there?
That's the
The
property.
beach,
That's-
yeah.
It's behind this shop.
Yeah, this is the tall hedge running through here with the fence, with the adjacent fence. Next door, we have an odd situation where the cars are parked pretty much half in the street. The garage has been converted here so that you can't park in the garage. And this is a one-car carport that serves the house to the rear, which would be on the ocean side. So it's a real odd situation there. These are more pictures of the existing house. In a lot of cases, people have built high fences in the front, which is on their property line, their front property line. A lot of them are 8 feet high, and you get a feeling of a tunnel effect when going through these streets with cars parked on the street and not being able to see any houses behind the high fences. Here's a situation where they have no garage, or the garage has been converted, and they have a camper with. So it's a real mixture of site, situations there that has never been changed. There's a lot of Mediterranean Spanish houses as you go down Edgewater. These are some of them here, and all of them are two-story. And I think that, you go from the Spanish Mediterranean, and then you go to a super contemporary. And these are kind of a mixture of different designs, which are a two-story. This one's right around the corner. And I think it's good when a neighborhood does have varied designs to the houses. Instead of looking at all wood houses and or either all tile houses. I think it's good to have a variety. These are the houses pretty close to across the street, and they're, all the wood siding are pretty much getting weathered over the years. But there's a lot of Mediterranean houses in the neighborhood there.
Okay. Thank you. Do we have anything else to present?
I have a landscape plan. Chris here can...
Okay.
Thank you, Jim. So I'll kind of run through the landscape. It's fairly simple. It's not a huge area. But starting out at the street here, Edgewater Way, as Jim mentioned, this is the path down to the Mesa Steps area. So the proposal, in order to gain some privacy, is to install an 8-foot high wall along the property line here and a lower fence here to keep people from walking into the front yard. We have a lot of sort of Mediterranean type plantings and materials, flagstone and some sandstone boulders in the front yard, some smaller palm trees, a little clump here, and a larger shade tree out front to get a little bit of privacy. This is a Tier 3 SWMP, so we're looking at as much permeability as possible for surfacing, and that would include tumbled pavers for the front driveway. The storage utility area on the side, yet to be determined, but either additional pavers or gravel or decomposed granite or something like that. We're looking to do a lot of planted joints with the flagstone where appropriate. It might be a little hard in this area because it'll be very shady, but we'll do that wherever possible. Let's see, so this is all fairly solid. We have a fountain here in the little courtyard, and as you move around towards the side, we go to planted joints and little small plantings on each side. To the back, this would have to be hard. Again, it's still up in the air as to whether or not this is planted joints. It'll be a discussion with the client down the road. But new pool with infinity edge and jacuzzi, obviously within the structural setback there, and a little seating area out here to gain views out to the west. A few of the few items that I wanted to especially get feedback from the board would be the possibility of an access gate here from this residence so that they can utilize the path to the Mesa steps. And also we have a path that sort of swings out and around here as a little shortcut because they'll be walking their dogs just like most of the other folks here in the neighborhood. Beyond that, I would take any questions, but I think that's the gist of it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'd like
Yes,
to
sir.
mention, looking down the pathway, and this whole area here is all chips and dirt. There's not one plant in this area, and
Talking into the mic. That's right.
so that's why we recessed the wall in a few places to get some plants growing on that side of the wall. The other possibility is to work with the city to maybe plant some trees and maybe a tree line going down there, and my client would maintain those. But right now it's just dirt and chips. There's not one plant there.
Yeah, and I think that would, if I may, afford an opportunity to soften that wall quite a bit more. So some large native shrubs up against that wall, I think, would help to, really soften that area and green it up.
Thank you. Any other piece of presentation? Okay, we'll go to board questions in a moment, but we do, I will open a public hearing on this item. So the first speaker is Bernie Bernstein. Bernie, if you'll come forward, introduce yourself, and give us your address, please. Okay.
Yes, hello, Mr. Chair and members of the board. You know me, I'm Bernie Bernstein. I am on the board, and I'm recusing myself from this project because I live on Cooper Road right around the corner. And I'm just speaking as a concerned citizen about this project. I thank Jim Zimmerman. I did go over the plans with him the other day so I would have an understanding about it. And I hope that you have all visited the site and have thought about the impacts that this will have on the neighborhood, both short-term and long-term. This is a neighborhood in transition, and many of the properties are either in escrow or for sale right now. So whatever we set the precedent for here now is going to affect what happens to this neighborhood in the future. And I think it's critical to maintain the character, the natural, organic feel, and apply the guidelines of the Neighborhood Preservation Ordinance to this very special area. It does not yet have large two-story mansions on this part of the street, and most of the neighbors want to keep it that way. Moreover, this is a test case for the SFDB. On page 5D of the Single Family Design Board guidelines, it is clearly stated that compatibility, and that's the key term, compatibility, be appropriate to the site and to the neighborhood. Although designed beautifully by the architect, I think this is a gorgeous house somewhere else, but it does not fit here. This site has already been discussed as sloping down to the beach, so the FAR is deceptive. Second of all, the bulk and size are absolutely not in character to meet our guidelines. In fact, in the listing for this house, which just sold June 14th, 2013, the house is described as a cherished, moody cottage. This should be further studied. Also, just hearing Mr. Zimmerman's comments about the creation of landscaping along the public pathway, in my opinion, while I appreciate the intent, it seems to me that it's just another way for the applicant to create a buffer zone for themselves. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you very much.
Next speaker is Elizabeth Wolf, I think.
So can I make a comment that it was clearly stated that it's not a Moody cottage?
Yes, it's not a Moody cottage.
So that was incorrect on the realtor's brochure.
Yeah.
So from my understanding.
All right.
I don't know. We think somebody should clarify that, though.
Well, they did that. Yeah. So it's not a Moody cottage. Elizabeth, if you'll sit there, please introduce yourself and your address, please. For the record.
Hello, I'm Elizabeth Wolfson. My address is 214 Via Sevilla, a block and a half away from the property.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm not an expert, as some of you are, and as Bernie is. I'm just a neighbor. And I moved to the Mesa because of the quality of the Mesa. And actually, I lived in the house for a couple of years, so I know the property very, very well. And I know how close it is to the beach steps and to its neighbors. And my view, and I know many of my neighbors feel this way, it doesn't fit in. And we do have Spanish architecture in Santa Barbara. There's not a whole lot of Spanish architecture on the Mesa, and the only thing that's going up Spanish architecture are the new people and the new houses that are being built. So, as Bernie said, it's a precedent that most of us really want to protect. The Mesa is not, it's not Malibu, and it's not even Montecito. It's a regular neighborhood where people are out and about and allow access to all the views. And it's really the tower that most people are upset about. I don't even see the purpose of it. And the height. That's really all I have to say.
Okay, thank you. Next speaker is Madeline Bessar. Esper, excuse me. Okay. If you could state your name for the record and your address, please. Yes, and speak into this microphone right there. Thank you.
My name is Madeline Bear, and I'm one of the family members of the Bacher family who own 2341 Edgewater.
And that is?
Right
there?
adjacent to
Okay.
the proposed building site. And, let's see. So shall I begin here? I live there off and on, and I maintain the property. And my relative Claire Bacher is in Europe right now, and if she gave you a letter, I hope you consider it, because she is indeed the owner, and all the Bacher family are owners, okay, as well as me to a certain extent. Now, regarding 2345, I have an interest in the adjacent property, 2341 Edgewater, being a family member, and I even have more of an interest and love for our treasure, the neighborhood, the very family-oriented neighborhood. And it is pretty much the last of its kind in Santa Barbara. Being a mail carrier, I have traveled all over Santa Barbara, delivering mail as a sub. And I know for a fact that you don't see the kind of neighborhood pretty well anywhere else in Santa Barbara where the neighborhoods, people just go along the street every evening walking their dogs and everything, a slew of them. And on Saturday, it's particularly bad. And believe me, delivering mail, it was very hard getting around the crowds of people conversing in the neighborhood, conversing in the middle of the street while I was trying to deliver the mail. So this is very nice for the neighborhood, a very warm atmosphere. So I feel that, let's see, I'd like to refer to the Neighborhood Preservation Ordinance, and I'd like you to consider whether this proposed structure fits in the warm, woodsy, earthy ambience of our neighborhood. The large 2,800 square foot building, as proposed, is squeezed very tightly in the permissible perimeter, as Mr. Zimmerman pretty well pointed out. Also inside, the rooms are pretty snug. Anyway, outside, it doesn't seem to leave, from what the pictures I've seen and such, it doesn't seem to leave much room on either side for woodsy trees or an earthy atmosphere. And it is indeed a charming Mediterranean motif. But
Ma'am, if you could wrap up, please. Your 2 minutes are up.
Oh.
You have 2 minutes.
Okay, anyway, it stands forever naked and cannot be clothed warmly in the trees. So, looking at the pictures of 2307, 2315 Edgewater, you see that they are big structures that are closed in trees and look very warm. I feel it sets a precedent. If we have this home as it is, it sets a precedent for the neighborhood, for all the houses that are for sale to have permission to go this way. I had a little bit of permission from the young lady that was, what was her name?
It's board's purview.
Okay, I have a note from the owner who's in Europe at the moment, and she would like to have some of her ideas.
We received copies of all of those.
Yeah, can I just put a little in the record, just a couple of paragraphs? Do I have permission? Come on, Fred.
Guys okay? All right. You may read it into the record.
Yes, may I
If you could
please?
state who it's from, please.
This is Claire Bacher, one of the principal owners, one of the majority owners of it, and she feels that she didn't have much notice for the hearing, and she was unable to attend, and it was very hard for her to get information forthcoming, okay? And she feels the increase of the size of the house, 30%, is excessive, and she doesn't feel that the Spanish style is at all compatible to the neighborhood, although it's charming. It should be up on the hill somewhere where other houses are of the same nature congregate. The neighborhood consists of relatively simple houses, about half the square footage of the proposed house, and substantial yards surrounding them. She's worried about the tower being too high and imposing on us as neighbors, and she'd like to know exactly how high that tower is going to be before any vote goes through. And we don't have any plans for the second-story house, despite her request. As I understand, she only spoke once to Mr. Zimmerman, and she's kind of awaiting some pictures and schematics from him. And we're worried about the wall on both sides. Kind of smacks of, just a moment. It smacks of closure.
Okay, so that's what's in her letter?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, thank you. I do have one question, ma'am, if you could,
Yeah,
for
sure.
us. Since you say you've lived in this house, know the neighborhood. What do you consider the neighborhood? Is it just the Edgewater Street?
Oh,
Or
no.
What is the neighborhood, the whole mesa?
Well, the neighborhood
thought about what the
is
neighborhood
probably the first block of Cooper and Mohawk Mesa. And just,
So
you know,
pretty much the
around where the
houses
Beach
on
Boys were.
the houses
you know,
on both sides of
yeah.
the street along the block, is that?
And around the where the Beach Boys were, and just up a little bit on Mesa as well.
And what about the, having been out and walked the neighborhood, as at least what I understood the neighborhood, there is some Spanish houses further down Edgewater. Is
Yes,
that
sir.
what you consider part of the neighborhood, or is that a
I
different
do.
neighborhood?
Well, these guys are on 2307. They're very large structures, and we can live with them.
Okay.
I don't know how the neighborhood feels, but I feel they're pretty imposing. But at least they've got shade, and it takes away from the starkness and the blockiness of the.
Okay.
Of the.
All right.
So
Thank you.
that's my problem there. Thank
right,
you so
thank
much.
you. Okay, let's see. Sally Winton? Come forward, please. Right. My colleague reminds me if there's some other points that have already been made, if you can just get to the new points and say you agree with the other points.
Hi, Fred. I'm Sally Whitnov.
I couldn't read the name.
I know my handwriting's bad.
Sorry.
That's okay. I first moved. I live at 2312 Edgewater Way, which is just down the street from this house. I first moved to the Mesa in the early 1970s. I bought a house on Edgewater in 1981, and I've lived there for the last 32 years. I generally support private property rights, and when they comply with the code, I feel like that's kind of the way to go. This is a unique area. It's a couple of blocks with a combination of a beachy and a rural feel on that little section of Edgewater there. In the 1980s, the neighborhood decided we didn't want curbs and sidewalks, and at that point, the city let us go with it. We've had a few struggles since then, but we still have no curbs and sidewalks along those 2 blocks there. If you look down the street from either end, it's mostly bushes and trees you see, not much of the houses along there, so we are set back. As Mr. Zimmerman said, most of the houses are set back a little bit. I think this new house looks very nice. It's a beautiful home. I don't think the second story looks that large to me. It doesn't seem like it increases that much. But my concerns are primarily is the closeness to the street that it's going to be. I think as you come down Mesa Lane, you're going to be looking at this large imposing house, which is not part of the character of the neighborhood. I don't know if that can be softened or changed. And I don't know about the 8-foot wall. That seems pretty imposing to me along that walkway that we all walk several times a day. Maybe an 8-foot wall is legal, but that seems pretty darn high to me to go across there. And also, unfortunately for you, will be a victim of graffiti over there. I think there's some other homes on Edgewater, maybe similar size, but they're much more subtle in appearance. And the last thing is, I think this size is possible on that lot, but I'm concerned, and I believe some of the others, are this becoming another Shoreline Drive. And so I know that's not your problem, but we've seen what happened at Shoreline with the massive big house one after another, and I think that's some of our phobia against this one is we're just scared that that's what's going to happen along that whole section of street there. And I don't know how to resolve that issue, but that's my concern.
Thank you. Sally, before you leave, I have a question. Walking that street, my general impression was, as some of the speakers have described, a lot of hedges, a lot of fences. There's a lot of 8-foot fences that appear to be right on the front property lines.
I don't know of 8-foot fences. There's some hedges that are certainly.
There appears to be a lot of high fences.
High hedges, yeah.
Okay, and high hedges, a combination thereof. And so you don't see into a few of the properties on either side of this site just because of the nature of how it's laid out. Is that what you conceive as part of your neighborhood? Is that a plus or a minus?
The green and the trees is a plus to me. The houses being a little more subtle in there is a plus to me. This one to me is a little stark and bold.
Okay.
And that's just my personal
Aside
opinion.
from this app, I'm just looking at what's-
Yes. We all kind of like, I think, the trees, the bushes, the house is a little more subtle set back. We're all out walking and in the neighborhood all the time, but yes.
Okay.
And
Thank
we're
you.
not looking at privacy and fences to keep people out. Just,
Okay.
unfortunately, that's a pretty old neighborhood and all sorts of things.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any other speakers? Any further comments from staff before we go to questions from the board?
Actually, sorry, Mr. Chair, I do want to acknowledge I received a phone call this morning from Wanda Stavros, who was concerned with the project. She could not be here today, but wanted her concern to be heard before the board. She said the proposed architecture is a charming design, but it is not appropriate for this neighborhood. It is too large for the rural Mesa neighborhood.
Okay, thank you. Okay, having heard those comments, I'll close the public comment period, and we'll go back now to the board for questions, and I'll start with Jamie. Do you have questions, please?
I do have questions, but I just need a minute.
Okay, sure. Lisa?
We should have a copy here.
Oops, got to move this one over here. Sorry. Because you'll need to come and speak with a copy.
There's not one in there. We'll have to use that one.
Okay. Well, when she gets ready to ask her question. So, Lisa, do you have a question?
I'm ready.
Go ahead.
Thank you for your presentation, and I'm wondering if it's possible that you might be able to have tall columnar planting along the west wall, if we do.
Can you come and talk to them? We can get it out in front of the camera. There you go.
Thank you. I'm wondering if we might be able to continue, if you could possibly use more tall columnar planting along the west wall.
You need to turn one of those off there.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. Gotcha. Thank you. Well, we have a distance of approximately 6 feet from the edge of the house to the property line, which makes it difficult to put any sort of a hedge and the fence or wall in there. What we do have is the higher wall with vine pockets, and the proposal is to plant vines to green up that wall. And also, what Jim had mentioned, we'd like to, thank you, we'd like to get permission to do a little bit of planting along this wall to help with that as well. You're concerned about the height, and as you walk by here, is that the reasoning for that?
I am.
Yeah.
If the city would comply, that would be great, but in the event that they don't, I would hope that there could be a way to continue a palm or something.
Yeah, and there was discussion about that. I mean, these pop-outs could be a queen palm or something that would, give you that sort of green wall or green screen. So we'll explore that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Brian, do you have questions?
I have no questions.
Lisa?
Jamie.
So.
It's okay, Brian. Because the building envelope being pushed towards the street, I'm sure for the neighbors is a difficult one. So my question is, I noticed that like you do have the proposed trees in the front, and then on the other side you have palms, and then behind the big tree you have palms. Like, so you have a large tree right here, evergreen, and then you've got palms and palms, palm. I just wonder if it might help your case if you have more foliage rather than palms. I realize it's a Mediterranean and everything, but the neighborhood is used to that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we're open. I mean, if it would help to choose a different type of planting to help screen that.
The current rendering, if I may just follow up on Jamie's comment, the current rendering on the colored trees where they are. Why can't I hit it? 5, 6. That sketch doesn't reflect the planting in front of it.
Correct.
So the trees that she's describing would be in front of this elevation.
Yes, that was done prior to my involvement.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions?
Also, just questioning the 8-foot wall. What made you come to thinking that 8 foot would be the number?
I think it was more for privacy from the walkway, but I'm pretty sure that the owner would, I'm pretty sure my client would go with the 6-foot wall. I don't think that was a big deal for him.
That's it.
All right, thank you. I have several questions. First of all, I think the historic issue and the Moody Cottage issue has been settled. When I did walk down the walkway down here, this apparently is some kind of easement that goes onto their property, correct?
Yeah, I don't think they have an easement.
Or is that city property?
No, this is his property, but I don't think the city put together an easement for it. The city said, can we put steps on your property?
They just did it.
And they did it, yeah.
So anyway, I got down here, and looking from about right here back up, there is an existing, what appeared to be, at least from the bottom, looked like a deck out over in here. Is
Yeah.
that still there? Is that going away? or
That's
what's
still
happening?
there, yeah.
Does that go away?
I hope not.
Okay.
We're
That'll
checking
be
these.
subject of who? The zoning department? Planning commission? Okay.
Yeah, yeah. We're doing some research on when that was built.
Okay.
Because a lot of the brick are many, many years old. So we're trying to keep some of that.
Then I'd like to go to the site, this site plan, yes. So I'm just looking visually at this line here, and based on what you're telling me is allowed, it appears that, and I don't know if you did the math, at least 50% of this house couldn't be touched in any case, even if it stayed there.
That's correct.
So even if nobody bothered with this house, but they may want to come along and make a little improvement to this side, they couldn't do that.
You're not allowed to do anything.
And that's
with
more than 50% of the house in terms of square footage, maybe? Yes.
Well, I think the 2 stories back here, so
Maybe a little less than 50%?
maybe a little less.
Okay. So the top of slope is, by definition, right there.
That's correct.
Where does the top of slope, do we know where the top of slope of this property lands? Where is that? Does it just continue that way, or does it come out like this?
I think
Do you
it
have
comes through here.
Through here. And so
Yeah.
the house that I can see from over here, just the top of it I can see, is this cool gray, blue house over here?
Yes, right.
And is that, are there 2 houses on this property?
No, they have a driveway that runs up here
Okay.
and then out to the street.
So that's a different address?
Yes.
Okay.
And their garage is that gray house out here.
Okay. And then the speakers, the family that owns this adjacent property, that's their house?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay. I was trying to understand where everybody lives. Okay. Let's see. Let's talk about the fence for a while. There is a cyclone fence that runs all the way along here on this right-of-way for the access to the beach.
Right.
Then immediately on the inside of it is a wood fence. So is the cyclone fence a city fence? Who owns the fence? Who put the fences in?
I think the cyclone fence is the city's fence.
Okay.
And the wood fence
is the property owner's
is the
fence.
property owner's.
And right here, there appears to be a gate, and then there appears to be a garage door on the other side. Is that
They used to have access from the walkway into a garage.
Okay.
Which they're not allowed anymore.
And then the chain link fence that you showed in the photograph, and apparently goes down here, that's the property owner's fence. Correct? This, with the chain link and the gate out.
Oh, in the front, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you're proposing to take that away?
That'd be all removed.
Okay. And is there a
And
fence?
also, this chain link fence here will be removed.
Okay.
With the wood fence.
Okay.
Because it's within the 20-foot setback.
Okay. And I detected that you're not proposing to put a fence back here?
No.
Okay. Let's see. On the photographs of I'm trying to understand what everyone understands as their neighborhood, because my sense is people have different perception about what defines their neighborhood. So where was the photographs that were sitting on the floor over there? So could you just share again on this set of photographs, these photographs of Spanish-style houses, which ones are on Edgewater? Which ones are to the ocean side of Edgewater? Do you know?
All of them.
So these are all on the ocean side.
Right.
And what's the closest Spanish house on Edgewater to the house you're proposing?
I think it's this one here.
Okay. And it's about how many?
That's 2027, right?
So
2020.
2012?
That'd be this one here.
That one there?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's what, 3 or 4 houses down? 5 houses down?
About 5, yeah.
About 5 houses down, okay. And then on your drawings, maybe we can look at, yeah. So the existing height of this house is what, of the existing house? What's the highest point?
The ridge is almost 20 feet.
So it's 20 feet, and the house you're proposing, with the exception of the tower, is 23 feet?
23.
So it's 3 feet higher than that point?
Yeah. The top of this ridge is around 20 feet.
Okay. Then if I go back, again, looking at your photographs, these are the houses that are kind of catty a corner across the access way.
Right.
What are do we know more or less what the heights of those houses are?
No, I don't know.
Do we know what the height of this house is? You can see it from the
That's
driveway.
close to 30 feet.
That's close to 30 feet?
Yeah.
So we don't know. We would assume maybe that these are 9-foot floor heights from there to there. That's typically how you would 8-foot ceiling and
Right.
a foot.
Right.
So 8. So it's at least 18 feet, maybe more to the top of that ridge.
That's correct.
So that could be 20 feet. We don't know for sure.
Yeah.
And these houses, this one's on the opposite side of the ocean side of Edgewood,
Right.
as I recall, having walked by there. So is that
Yeah.
one. These would have ridge heights equal to or higher than what you're proposing?
I would say
Pierce?
they're equal or higher.
Okay. Fence, we asked about that. Then I think the other interesting piece of mathematics is, going back to your site plan, is if one were to do a floor area ratio of just this piece where you're putting the house, my assumption is that FAR would be fairly high, correct?
It'd be fairly high.
If you were to do it to the edge of the bluff, it still would be fairly high, but it might be within
Probably within 85.
within the 85% idea or guideline that
Right.
we're looking at, correct? Okay. And then just, I think my last set of questions on the elevations. So this floor-to-floor height on the existing house is, what do you think?
I'd say probably 9 feet.
9 feet
And then
here.
there's,
And it could be
to
shorter.
grade, it's another 1.5 foot or so.
Below there. So then if I go to your elevations, that floor line here at the front elevation is 9 feet.
Yes.
So that's not much different than the wood houses on the other adjacent kind of catty corner
No.
site.
Mhm.
And your plate height for the second floor is at 8 feet,
That's correct.
which is fairly typical for any two-story house in town. I mean, obviously we see houses that are bigger. Okay. I think that's, for the moment, my questions. Brian, you come up with anything else?
No, I don't have any questions.
Okay.
I have a question.
Jamie?
Do you know the existing square footage of the second story now and what the proposed square footage for the second story is?
Well, it's on the new house?
Yeah, and the
Versus
existing.
the old second story,
Oh,
square footage.
I'm not sure how many square feet. I would say it's fairly close to the same. This is, this whole portion is the second floor.
That's the existing house.
Yeah. So I would say it's fairly close.
So that's roughly, if I can use your scale, so that's roughly 30, is this 8/10? correct?
Yeah.
That's 35 feet roughly by 20 feet. And your proposal,
It says here on the front.
oh, is it on there?
Yeah, apparently existing.
Does it give a second floor?
Second story?
559 and 1153 on the new house. 559 versus 1153.
1153.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So twice.
So it's it's almost twice as much. So it's 559 square feet of the second floor on the existing house.
Okay.
And 1153.
Yeah. So it's about twice.
It's about twice the size. Okay. Okay. Now we'll go to comments, and just to remind you, a couple of things. One is this project requires environmental assessment, et cetera. So whatever comments we make are comments. We can request that as based on whatever we decide are the comments, we can request the applicant to return to us to address those comments before they continue to proceed to the Planning Commission. Or we can make a motion with comments that sends them to the Planning Commission. So that's kind of the two things. And then secondly, just so everyone understands, I'm reading from page 5D of our guidelines. And again, just so everyone clearly understands, these are guidelines. This is not law. This is not code. These are guidelines for this board to make a judgment call on. We might look at this particular case and decide that it does, in fact, based on our interpretations of the guidelines, meet the guidelines. And again, it may be the majority of us. It might be the minority of us. So let me just read so everyone clearly understands the key points that we would need to find in a finding once we make a final decision, and we're not doing that today. One is it has consistency in appearance. The proposed development would be consistent with the scenic character of the city and will enhance the appearance of the neighborhood. Compatibility. The proposed development will be compatible with the neighborhood and its size, bulk, and scale. Size, bulk, and scale. And each three of those are different components. Size refers to the square footage. The bulk refers to the shape and volume of the home. And the scale has to do with the relationship, in most cases, at least as we as architects look at it, to the human scale. Quality of architecture and materials. The development, including proposed structures and grading, is designed with the quality of architectural details and quality materials. Proposed materials and colors will maintain the natural appearance of the ridgeline or the hillside. And then we go on to talk about trees being compatible, size of trees, so forth and so on, health, safety, and welfare, good neighbor guidelines, which basically means that the applicant and the owner have had discussions with the neighbors, that they've taken into consideration privacy, landscaping, noise, and lighting. And finally, that we overall consider any hindrance to the public views, particularly from the public right-of-ways. So in this case, it would be from Edgewater and from the public access staircase and walkway to the beach. Okay, having said that, I will now go to comments. Ryan, would you like to start?
Real briefly, I think, yeah, the design of the house is very beautiful. There is a lot of intense emotional reaction to the home, obviously. And the only thing I can come up with at this time is suggesting that the wall be 6 feet as opposed to 8 feet. Possibly the tower will have to be removed, not have a tower element at all, somehow redesign it somehow so you don't have that. And then my third comment is possibly redesigning it so it steps back. We may have to move the house back a little bit and have it step back. And those are my only suggestions at this time.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Lisa.
I concur with Brian that the design is a lovely design. I'm okay with the height, being that it's very close to the existing height, and also feel that the design could work without the tower as well. My only other comment would be that I would like to see it recessed in some way along the front face.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Jamie?
Yes, I repeat some of the items that my colleagues here have mentioned. Maybe study options for the tower, in that a lot of the neighborhoods seem to be opposed to that. and it might give the house a more diminutive feel. I think that, again, losing some of the palms and having more trees in there would help, and the lowering of the wall. So.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'm going to go to my comments. I do have another question. I guess I forgot this question. So this is the line you can't exceed, correct?
That's correct.
So you could build up to that line?
You can build up to that line.
So in theory, if you weren't doing a swimming pool, you could shove the house back to, at least that corner could go back to here somewhere. Okay. So I think that I want to talk about the size, scale, and bulk issue. Okay. The size of this home, based in my view, for an average 3-bedroom house in Santa Barbara, is not terribly large. It's a reasonably sized home. 4 bedrooms, I guess. I'm sorry, but it's a reasonable. We're not looking at some of the things we've seen along Shoreline Drive. Certainly not some of the things we've seen proposed in the Upper East Side, and certainly not some of the things we've seen off of Ontario Road or out near Hope Ranch. So in terms of the size, I don't really have a big problem. I wouldn't be pushing to reduce the size of the house. Now let's go to bulk. Based on the renderings, which are quite lovely, and the Spanish style, the bulk may be a little bit too impressive. And I think that if you maybe approached it like a Moody solution, like the Sister Moody's, who were really short, and if you've ever been in one of their houses, you know that. And so maybe a way to approach this is, I realize that traditionally an 8-foot ceiling on the first floor is we all have 8-foot ceilings in most all our homes in town, and to get to a 9-foot, you have to have a foot of least structure to hold up the second floor. So that's how you get to 9 feet. That's why all those houses in this neighborhood are built like that are second floors. But maybe the creative part can get to when you get to the second floor. And I don't really object to an approach of a Spanish-style home, even on the Mesa. There were I think it's two of our most famous California Impressionist painters who lived in a Spanish-style home on the Mesa. Back in the 1930s when it was pretty empty. Yeah. So that's who we are in Santa Barbara. We accept Spanish-style houses. So I don't really object to the language or the architecture approach, but maybe you could take a look at the bulking of that second floor based on what the Moody Sisters might do. And that is, they cheated on the height. They lowered that 8-foot plate height on the edges, and I think under the code you can do that. You can bring down the edges down to 7 feet. I think that's allowed under the code.
Right.
I think the tower element, I think you could still have a tower element, but I think it could sit much lower. Maybe it comes down and engages the eave at that point. So it still reads as a tower, but it isn't very high. In fact, the height of that could be lower than the ridge height of the roof. Yeah. And the current roof is at about 20 feet, which looks like that's about the height of the houses that are catacoring, the board and bat houses that are on the side.
Yeah.
So at 23 feet, I think you've all shared, that's not terribly high. I think it's how we look at the bulk of that. And then in terms of scale, I think that if you worked on some of the other elevations like this one, where you compare the human scale to that opening, I think that'll begin to help kind of make it read more Moody-like, so to speak. If we were to do that, I think that might help. In terms of the site plan. In terms of the site plan, perhaps how you articulate this front wall In other words, right now you have that wall reads right into this wall.
Right.
Maybe there's another way to let that wall play a little differently. I think when you come back with the rendering of whatever you do on the front, that you come back with two renderings. One is a rendering of what it looks like without the trees in front of it, and then a rendering with the trees that are fairly specific to the tree specimens. Right. So if it's a palm tree, it looks like a palm tree. If it's a shade tree, whatever. So that we can see what it looks like from the street.
Screened.
Now, given the fact that you have a room full of neighbors here quite concerned of what this project looks like, you might want to talk with your client about investing the time to create a model, either a computer model so that we can see what this looks like in the context of the immediate neighborhood, or a physical model, however you would like to approach it, or some sketches or whatever, so that I think most often what I perceive is lots of folks have a hard time, we all have a hard time kind of understanding what this is going to look like. I think some of us that are trained as designers and architects have a little better, because we do it every day, but I think it's hard for lots of folks to visualize it. So I think anything in your toolkit that you can pull out to kind of help share that will go a long ways to share with the neighborhood what this house might look like in the context of the other's neighborhood. And then finally, I think that a couple of people expressed that this is a changing neighborhood. It's a neighborhood that hosted the Beach Boys. It's a neighborhood that is in the process of maturing to a certain degree, to a certain character. And I think we have to be cognizant of that as members of this board. It's certainly not Shoreline Park. It's not the Upper East. It's not the Riviera. It has a certain character, but on the other hand, I think some of that character, as people buy these properties, fix them up, clean them up, change fence heights, trim hedges, plant new plants, whatever, it's going to continue to change. And I suspect that the houses on each side of this property will change at some point in time. The house across the street with a little delightful children's play structure by the fence, that'll change at some point. So the neighborhood will change, and change sometimes is really difficult. And so I think our job is to be able to demonstrate to the neighborhood to some degree that we clearly understand what their concern is. On the other hand, we also have to understand the rights of the person applying. And so somewhere in there, hopefully we'll find a happy medium. So having said all of that, the chair would entertain a motion with comments only. And then in that motion, if you could be clear about whether the applicant should return to us with responses to those comments, or whether we're comfortable enough to allow him to go on to the planning commission. So it's just comments, so you can just list the comments if you'd like. Anybody want to try to attempt?
All right, I'll give it a try. Okay, the board appreciates the client's design with the following comments. We'd like the architect to study lowering the walls between the right-of-way going into the beach, study the tower element. It's been suggested that you either eliminate it or lower it. There's been suggestions to possibly manipulating the plate heights, perhaps using a 7-foot plate height, going into a higher plate height. The Moody sister style has been suggested as a way of a reference in designing the house. Pulling the house back farther, closer to the structural setback, so it's not so close to the Edgewater Lane. Perhaps having the front wall and garden wall break up and not be a single line across the front. It's been suggested that there be two examples of the front elevation, one using the elevation itself and the other one using with the plants in pretty much mature growth as to seeing how it looks covered with foliage. Suggesting perhaps the second floor also step back a bit as well, so it's not a solid massing in the front. I think that's all I can think of. Anything else?
Okay. Do we
Did
have,
you talk about lowering the wall?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, and how about the trees?
And
More
certain-
evergreen
more evergreen
to
trees
fit with the neighborhood?
to fit in with the neighborhood.
okay, that is the motion on the floor. Is there a second? We have a second by Lisa. Okay, before we go to vote, any further comments, any other thoughts? One of the things the maker of the motion didn't clear, we want him to come back.
Yeah, have you come back to the full board?
Okay.
Before Planning Commission?
Before Planning Commission, yes.
Before.
Yes, before Planning Commission. And is that an indefinite?
It'd be indefinite, probably. I'll have to work that out with Michelle
Okay,
soon.
so indefinite. So that's the second agree.
Yes.
Okay. So that's the motion on the floor. Further discussion?
Yeah, I'd like to mention
Yes.
on the front setback, the way it angles off, the only, if we look at the I mean, here's the property line, and here is the, you know, we're almost 25, 26 feet at this point.
Right.
So it's not that, when you come down Edgewater, you see a garage.
Right.
You know,
It's still got a decent-sized driveway, but I
Yeah.
think what the board is talking about, you know, maybe this doesn't have to be that shape. This could shift
Yeah.
back a little bit or whatever.
Yeah,
That's something
okay.
to study. Okay, further questions, comments, et cetera? The chair calls for the question. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Those opposed? Abstentions? So carried. Okay, thank you for your presentation. To the audience, if you let the staff know, they will continue to notify when this comes back. And Jim, I would hope your owner continues to have conversations with the neighbors. Thank you. Pardon?
Doesn't noticing of the neighborhood happen anyway?
No, it only happens the first time. So if you're an interested party, please let them know. They'll make sure you get yeah, you can share this. Over here.
So these are the new photos.
Okay. Item number 3, 1816 Cleveland Avenue. The applicants can step forward, please. What's that? You have to sign in one of those gold slips.
The form is to ask your questions?
Yes, yeah. See that, the little form on there? Just hand it to her and tell her what item you want to ask a question on.
Do you have a photograph?
Where? Oh, right here, I'm sorry. I sure did. Okay.
And the secondary set, I guess I supply those.
Okay.
Just want to make sure what I need to bring out.
Okay. Oops, I missed half the board here.
Yeah.
Everybody go.
Microphone turned on, Fred. Or is it-
We haven't called the resource folks.
Mr. Sweeney? Can I
Yes,
ask a
ma'am.
quick question? Will we have an opportunity again to speak about proposed changes, which sound pretty good, but can we?
It'll be an exact same session like we had today.
Okay, good.
Same exact session. We'll have a public hearing,
All right.
public comment period. They'll present again. We'll see it again. You can comment on it.
Well, I like the tree thing, but you know, I think a lot of the neighborhood concern was ambiance more than size.
Okay. Where'd Brian go? Oh, okay. All right. So while Brian's walking over here, let me read the description of this project. It's at 1816 Cleveland Avenue. Proposal is to permit the as-built 64 square foot entry porch addition, an as-built 95 square foot underfloor utility room addition, a remodel and addition to the existing two-car carport, and permit the as-built approximately 342 square foot uncovered deck located above the carport. The proposed total of 1,283 square feet located on a 5,050 square foot lot in the Hillside Design District is 53% of the guideline floor to lot area ratio. The proposal includes staff hearing officer review for a requesting zoning modification. The project will address violations identified in ENF 2013-00555. This is here for concept review, comments only. Project requires environmental assessment and staff hearing officer review for requested zoning modifications. If you'll introduce yourself, please.
Hi, I'm Peter Hunt.
Peter, and you're representing the owners?
I'm representing the owners.
Okay, thank you. Before we go to presentation, do we have any staff presentation on this?
This lot, I'm sorry, Suzanne Regal, case planner for the project. This lot is an interior lot in the R2 zone. It has 6-foot interior setbacks around the perimeter of the property. A portion of the as-built addition of the utility room, I believe, is located in the interior setback. And then the carport, the roof of the carport acts as a deck that's as-built. There's a railing at the edge of the carport. The carport is constructed and is legally non-conforming to the required setback. So the applicant has proposed a railing outside of the setback. So the deck is not in the setback, but it's an alteration to a legal non-conforming building that changes the basic exterior characteristics. So.
Okay. Thank you. Let's see. Let's go to your presentation, please. And just excuse me, before you start, if anyone is here liking to make a comment on this particular project, please fill out a form over on the clipboard and share it with the staff to my left.
And can I make a comment
Yes.
real quickly? For those of you that are speaking, the board's not, we appreciate the fact if you've lived in the neighborhood for a very long time, but actually we are more interested in your actual description of what you feel about the project. We don't really need to know the history of why or how long you've lived there, because anyone that's been there for 6 months has just as much a right to speak as someone who's lived there for 35 years. I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Hunt.
There were some additional drawings requested by staff, and prior to presenting, I'd like to, although they will be what I comment upon secondly. And the photographs that were presented, I know you have one copy, and here's a second copy. And then the staff asked for some more photographs that you can see from the deck. They wanted to see the views from the deck, and unfortunately I only brought one copy of those.
Okay.
Just wanted to let you know, and there's some other things. To begin the presentation, this is an interior parcel, and maybe I would start with this one. Okay. The orientation, I'm going to orient this so that north is to the top of the sheet. So here's Cleveland down here, and Grand Avenue is off the sheet. This is at 1/8" scale, and this is the parcel here. And these are the neighboring parcels. So you can see there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 parcels. And in 1927, the only permit for this is in 1927, and that's the only thing that's in the city records. And as you can see, Cleveland is here. And at that time, this was one parcel, and there were 2 houses on there. And this house was getting a permit to add on to it. And as you can see, they drew 2 roughly squares. And on here, someone from the city said, well, it's 3 feet from the property line to the edge of the building. And indeed, go back over to my site plan here now, which is right here. It's 3 feet. And they said that it was 39 feet 6 inches from the edge of the house to the property line. And there's 39 feet, and it's actually to a rock wall. The property line's back here, but it's understandable that they would think the rock wall was the property line. And then they said it was 20, it's upside down, I think it says 27 feet. And it turns out exactly 27 feet from there to there. So that configuration stays the same from 1927 to now, to 2013. And that's pretty remarkable, I think, for an enforcement case. So that was the first thing. The house, they altered this house without a permit, and that's why it's here. These drawings, if you look at it, excuse me, that's upside down to me. Here we go. So this is the permitted roof, and then here's the as-built roof. Here's the permitted floor plan. This is the as-built floor. In other words, this is the old and this is the new. Okay? And way back when, this was an R3 property, and now it's an R2 property. And so as an R2 property, the setback is 6 feet, and you can see the city staff has written on there 6 feet. Now, it turns out that when this house was constructed sometime prior to 1927, they didn't build it exactly parallel to the property line. And the city has pretty extensive records, and I've got all the photographs from around the neighborhood. But I've confirmed this with many people on the city staff. This yellow line, this is the adjacent property. That would be this property here, is this yellow square. And you can see on here that the house sits askew to the property line. And we've attempted to draw it that way. So although and I've measured it, and it's 3 feet here, but over here, it's more like 3 feet 4 inches. So by the time you get to this corner of the house, it's 6 feet 1. So this is beyond, in other words, it's not in the setback. And that's significant because this corner here, they built this underfloor area right here without a permit, but it's not in the setback. And so we've talked to staff members about that. And they're in concurrence, and the building department and the planning department. But I'm going to stay with the house for a moment. The initial building had a series of roofs like this, and they re-roofed it. And so this little sketch here, this in black is the new roof, and in red. So if you put you see how the ridge line and the hips, so you put that right on top of there, you see how it fits on top. So in red, these two areas here, what the ordinance says is that if the roof pitch changes in the setback, then you have to come to the single family design board. And so the area that is changed, its pitch, are these two areas here, which essentially is here and here. And if you add up the aggregate area of that, it's about 48 square feet, which is about the size of a California king bed, which is much smaller than this table. So that's what we're talking about, the alteration of the roof. If I could go to the second sheet. Similarly, this is the old and this is the new. And in cross-section, this is the roof is like this, and then the new one is like that. So this area here gets a little bit higher at the ridge. But in the long section, no, it's going to take me a while because it's upside down. I'm having a hard time looking at my own plans, our drawings of this as-built. So at the ridge, I've drawn it at the ridge. You can see the ridge height changes, but that's not in question as to whether we come to this board or not. It is in question, of course, because it's an enforcement case. You're supposed to get a permit to do this, but as far as the review for the board. But here, you can see the difference. But the area in question is this little area there. So that's the roof of the house. The deck over the carport. So it was my understanding that this carport's been here a very long time. But when we look at the Sandboard maps, which I believe they stopped doing sometime around World War II or something, prior to World War II, the Sandboard people did not put a carport on here. So although we're saying there's an existing carport, because apparently it's been there 65 some years, it wasn't there on the Sandboard map. So initially I thought, oh, well, it's been there a long time. So we're talking about essentially a new carport. So the way the rules work, with a carport, although the setback is 6 feet for an R2, they're in the R2 zone. If you're a covered or uncovered space, you can build your carport to within 3 feet of the property line. And this carport here is 3 feet 2 inches. So this edge of the carport is fine. And over here, it's set back more than 6 feet, so this carport isn't a problem in the setback there. The deck, on the other hand, the deck is supposed to be set back 6 feet. But the guideline says, well, we'd like to see your deck at 15 feet back. And what's happened here is, I want to go to those photographs.
Somebody took them off the table. Sorry.
Oh, before I go to the photographs, let me demonstrate this. So staff asked that we provide this neighborhood map. And the neighborhood map, they asked us to put contours on here, bless you, and also the distances to the adjacent properties. So much of the information comes from Google Earth and these sorts of things, and we can see it. And then also the contours, and we found the contours of the city. So in this area, if you're familiar with the Lower Riviera, Grand Avenue is up here, Moreno Road comes down, and then Pedregosa Street goes down this way. And if you've ever walked that neighborhood, you may know that there's an area, and there's a house for sale there now called Hidden Hollow. In Hidden Hollow, there's a creek that comes down from El Encanto and Orpit Park, and it goes underneath Moreno Road, and then it comes through Grand Avenue, has all those walls, and it comes through Grand Avenue, and it flows down here, and the creek comes right through here. So this is significantly, this is higher and this is lower because the creek comes through here, and they built these houses. And so essentially, between here and here and here and here and here and here is 12 feet. So it falls pretty dramatically. This house is high and these two are low. That's my point. This one's actually significantly lower as well. So the thing is what do the neighbors see of this deck from, well, I didn't go on their property, but I can tell you what they see from the deck, and that's what these photos are. So I'll show you those photos first. Here's the deck. And this first one is looking towards 1802. That's this property here. So you can see the rail of the deck, and this house is down. And there's heavy vegetation, as you can see here. It's heavily vegetated on this side. There is this alley that runs up here, and then there are paved areas in here, so it's not as heavily vegetated on that side. But the deck is closer to these. So what you see is this house, the house is down there, and there are all these trees. This house down here is further away, and there are even more trees. This house here, we're going to be talking about a fence that's right here on top of the deck. So I'll let you know that this photo, I had to climb up and look over the fence, so I'm a little bit higher here than ordinary, but the idea of the fence, of course, is so that it shields the view. But that's what you see here, and then this view is looking from here towards this carport, this triangular-shaped carport. This view is I'm getting it turned around. is looking this way. There's a fence that goes like this. And this view here is from the deck in this direction here, looking back at these two houses, in this case, this house. And you can see from these photographs, I know it's pretty confusing, but there are a lot of trees, and there are a significant number of olive trees on this parcel. There are 2 stone pillars here. One of them said the olives. Apparently this was all an olive orchard 75, 80, 100 years ago. One of the things they asked us to indicate on here which is on the newer plans. So you have an older, we did bring you newer plans. There's a gate right here, which is this gate here. It's some, let's say, 15 feet from the property line in this direction, maybe 20 feet from that direction. This is taken up here, just inside the gate, looking down at the house. This, here you can see the olive trees. And this view here is looking directly this way at the house across the street. And here, this view here is taken from the foot of the driveway at the alley, looking back at the carport and the rail above. And the fence is here. Currently the fence is here. And we're moving the fence back to be 6 feet from the property line, which puts it there. That's why it says here, carport roof, and then it says deck, to bring it into conformance with the ordinance. Let's see, if there are any other things. The underfloor area. There's an as-built underfloor area, and I think that was, one of them 65 square feet, and one's 95. Well, first as-built area would be right here. Before, that was a porch, and they included it in the, and now they moved the entrance from there to here. So they included it as part of the house. And that door is this door right here. So the bathroom window's right there. And then the underfloor area, which is here, would it appear in this area right about here. So the underfloor area, no, it's where that window is. Excuse me.
So that's it.
That window there. So there's the deck above it. And we gave you all of the square footages that are asked for, and the drawings that were submitted have those on here, even though they're asking for them. And I have a copy of that if you want to know what those numbers are.
Okay.
So I think I covered most everything.
Okay. All right.
Thank
We'll go to open for public comment. I don't see any slips. Do we have any letters and communication on this project? I'll close public comment. Before we go to questions of the board, back to staff for any additional comments at this moment? No? Okay. Let's go to the board for questions, and I'll start with Brian. No questions? Jim? No questions? Bernie?
I have 2 quick questions. I was just wondering what generated all of a sudden, did a neighbor complain, or what brought you here? And then the other question is the remodel in addition to the existing 2-car carport. I didn't quite get what that was, just real quickly.
Well, real quickly, I know that there's an enforcement case, and that's why we're here. Whether it was the neighbor or the city or an act of God that brought upon this enforcement case, I don't know. I understand we could find out. I don't know that the owner is interested in finding out.
Okay.
The second question is, there's an addition in addition? I didn't understand the
It says
question.
that there's, let's see, a remodel in addition to the existing 2-car carport.
Yeah, so what's the addition?
Okay, so the existing,
Is that?
That's
is that
this.
the
That-
addition?
that would be- this
So
would
it's
be-
an existing addition? It's
Yes,
already there?
It's already there. It's been as-built.
Okay.
And it's under,
So this description is not quite as accurate as it should be.
right. So Bernie, and if graphically, it's here. So they built an addition in this area.
Okay.
So you see how the utility room got twice as large?
Okay, no, the only reason I asked it was because I wondered if there had been an issue, if you had talked to a neighbor about it or something, but no, okay.
Nothing I know.
Thank you. Lisa?
No comments, no questions.
Well, I have several questions. I walked up to this site and I was very confused because I couldn't find a house labeled 1816. There's no identification. I found a mailbox down on Cleveland that said 1816, but also in the same mailbox it says 1814 and a half. Where is 1814 and a half?
Okay. I can answer that question.
Okay.
Back in 1927, they called this 1814 and a half. And recently, I've been on this job a month or so, maybe 2 months. I found out that the city had two files, one called 1814 and a half and one called 1816. And the city has now moved everything in 1814 and a half into the 1816 file. And the owner hasn't gotten around to changing the placard on there. The fire department would like to know where 1816 is, I'm sure.
Right.
And I'm sure the owner would like to
I
know.
went out and took some photographs, and that's why I was confused, because here's your sign that says 1816. That says 1814 and a half. So I was suspicious about where this house was. So that's why that kind of solves that problem.
Okay.
Okay. So then, kind of going from there to this utility room. Whoops, sorry. This utility room. So this addition was made. Apparently, a wall was torn out. So now this is really the space that's got at least an 8-foot ceiling in it.
No, it doesn't. And the ceiling heights are on here.
It says 6 foot.
6.2, 6 feet 4 inches.
4
And this
inches
is
ceiling
4
height
feet.
from here to here. Okay,
Right,
so
and
it's
this
moving up and down.
Yeah.
So the only
steps.
part that's 7 feet is this piece.
Correct.
Okay.
The as-built piece.
And there's a water heater or something.
Yes.
Okay.
An existing. Yeah.
All right. And then, as you were describing things, I was confused. Does the roof basically stay in place, or are you proposing a new roof?
We're proposing to keep the as-built roof.
Okay, so that's the way it originally looked. This is the way it's built now, because they did this little thing on the front porch. Okay.
These are two shed roofs.
Okay, and then if we could go back to that drawing, yeah, that drawing there, because that kind of helped. So the vegetation that you were pointing out by the photographs appears to be mostly on this property and this property.
Yeah. From here, definitely down to there.
Okay.
And then those olive trees are over here.
So these folks don't have control over that vegetation. It's just there. Okay. And then there, I noticed, in fact, this photograph, I think, shows it. There's a shed there. Is that allowed or not allowed, or do we know from zoning? You see what
It's
I'm...
one of those Rubbermaid sheds.
Whatever,
Storage
Costco
shed.
storage shed. Is
Yeah.
that allowed in that area?
In where? I'm sorry.
This is right at the driveway. It's about
probably
right
right
there. Is that...
Sorry. It would have to be located at least 6 feet from the interior property line, and it's less than 120 square feet and less than 10 feet in height. It doesn't have any utilities to it, so it doesn't require a building permit.
Okay, so, but it theoretically could be there. And then the height of this fence is...
It's 6 feet.
That's 6 feet. That's okay then?
8 foot is the maximum.
Okay. And so is there a front yard to this thing?
There is not.
Okay,
Because it's
on that
landlocked.
alleyway. It's landlocked. Okay, gotcha. And then just one final question, just on understanding what's going on here. When I got up to here, there was a truck parked here. This appeared to be a driveway, and there's a gate over here. So is that gate right here? And that gives access to this other property?
I suppose.
But there's no easement or anything?
Not that I've found. There may be.
And so the face of this other house, that's not this point. It's back further?
Right. So, for example, this property line here is that property line there.
Okay.
And the rock wall
is right
is
there.
something
Okay,
like this.
gotcha. And so the house I was looking at sits on the other side. Okay.
Right. And the driveway to this house here comes in this way. So it comes in from below.
Now, in terms of your new fence that you're proposing
We aren't proposing, this one.
This one. What does that look like? Do you have a drawing or
Well, I
what's
have
it
a
gonna look like?
photograph of it. We're proposed to.
I mean, I know it's there, but what are you gonna do?
It's not proposed, it's already there.
It's already there, so there it is, but we're proposing to move it in 3 feet.
Okay, so if I look at, I was looking at, I guess I didn't take a photograph of it. Maybe you have it. Yeah, right there.
There's the side view of it.
So basically, it's that fence that appears to be bamboo and some wood and whatever. You're just going to move that way.
This is the bamboo guardrail,
Yeah.
and this is the fence.
And what does that fence look like?
It's wood, and it's cedar, and it's 1x4s.
And are they
Vertical.
Vertical? Do they have space openings or?
No, that's
it's
pretty
just solid.
tight.
Okay.
The idea is a privacy fence.
So basically, you're going to move it back into here somewhere.
Mhm.
Okay. All right. Those are my questions. Anybody have further questions? So in essence, if I understand staff correctly, this is for comments only based on our aesthetics of the issues of the modification. So again, the modification is, could you run over those really quickly again? I'm sorry.
I apologize. I misstated it previously. It's an alteration to the roof form within the interior setback because the roof form is getting taller within the setback. That's what he showed you with those overlays. And then it's an alteration to a non-conforming building being the carport.
And what about the storage room underneath? Are we supposed to be looking at that also?
As Peter described, that is actually located, that as-built addition is located 6 feet 1 inches from the property line, so it is not in the required setback.
So we don't have to worry about whether we like the door or not like the door, whatever. It's not our issue.
That would be within your purview, but it's not a focus of the modification.
Okay, gotcha. All right. Let's go to comments. Brian.
Well, I think you've done a great job, and I can support your project. That's my only comment.
Jim?
Yeah, I think that he explained it very well, and I don't see any place where it's going to be a problem, on the as-built, so I support it.
Is it on? Somebody's not on. Okay.
I agree.
Bernie? Lisa?
Ditto.
I agree.
Okay. I guess my only comment is I'm not too enamored with the bamboo piece of the deck fence. It seems to me if you're going to go through the effort of moving the fence over, which means you got to tear it down and move it over, that you ought to make, and they've done a really nice job of putting the new fence around the property with a gate and so forth and so on, that maybe you ought to make a little effort to take care of the bamboo piece of that railing.
Can I get clarified? I thought you said it was 1x4.
Well, it is. It's the part we don't see.
Yeah, right here.
Right.
Yeah,
So
going back.
So the railing
So
is
that
bamboo,
railing, right.
and the fence is.
Oh, so you're saying upgrade this railing
Yes,
here?
exactly.
Oh, I see.
I'm just suggesting
Got it.
if they're going to go through the trouble of having to tear a piece of it off, move it back, et cetera, that they ought to really consider at least bringing the railing bamboo piece up to the same level as the fence.
So make it in conformance.
Exactly. So
Design.
that it kind of, and then that would kind of match the fence that they've put around the property, and I think then that would kind of start to make it look like somebody thought about the whole picture, so to speak. So that would be my comment. And I don't have a problem with the roof issue. I think that's an appropriate, given how this thing has evolved, it's appropriate, and I think the entry porch is fine. So, having said that, the chair would entertain a motion with comments only, and it should reflect comments on the aesthetics so that the hearing officer understands what we've looked at.
I'll make the motion, Mr. Chair.
Okay?
I move that we approve the we can't do that.
You're just making comments only.
Okay, the board feels that the alteration to the roof form is acceptable. The other non-conforming items as built don't present any horrific challenges to the neighborhood. And the third thing is we'd like the replacement of the bamboo fencing with standard wood construction.
Really?
Railing.
To match what's already.
To match what's already there.
Yeah.
Okay. That's the motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Do we have any further discussion? Hearing none, the chair calls for question. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? So carried. Mr. Hunt, thank you.
Mr. Chair, board members, that motion didn't clarify. Is that continued indefinitely the staff hearing officer and then to return
Yes.
to full board or consent?
Consent.
Maker of the motion. Consent?
Mhm.
Consent?
Yeah.
Second agree? That modifies the motion. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Who's the second? Jamie. Okay, thank you. So you go to the staff hearing and then go back to consent.
Does anyone have my other set of photographs? It says architect on the upper left.
Wait a minute, I may have grabbed them. Nope, see them. Nope. Papers on the floor, but I still don't see them. Nope. Okay.
There's one.
All right. We now have item number 4, 1291 West Mountain Drive. Almost an hour late. Comments during comments or before? Okay. Oh, okay, gotcha, okay. So, all right, thank you. This is a project that was at consent calendar earlier in the day. It was a proposal to construct a new 2,499 square foot, one-story, single-family resident and an attached 635 square foot, two-car garage located on a 3-acre lot in the Hillside Design District. The proposal includes 642 cubic yards of cut, 633 cubic yards of fill, construction of a detached 500 square foot accessory workshop structure, and a 390 square foot open barn is also proposed. Proposed total of 4,024 square feet is 66% of the maximum floor to lot area ratio. This is for review after final to add a 242 square foot to the east side of the residence and add one sliding door. And Brian, before I allow you to comment, if you please introduce yourself, please.
This is Alison Armour, who's the owner of the property, and my husband, Jonathan Broyes, and I'm here to assist you.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Board members, just to clarify a couple of things real quick here. This item that's before you right now was not on consent.
Oh,
This
was-
is a
I'm sorry.
separate item that is before you today, before the full board, to do the 242 square foot addition. What was before consent this morning was a proposed pool, and that was brought forward to the full board to be reviewed in conjunction with this project. Just to clarify, this morning, the pool plans that were proposed did not reflect this proposed addition, and we needed
weren't
some
at-
additional clarification
Right.
regarding the location of the proposed pool and existing tree.
Wasn't
in
accurately
relation to-
drawn.
So Brian, was that your comment? Do you have any other thing to add?
No, that's it.
That's it?
Basically, that
Okay.
came
And
before us.
then, Mr. Chair, just to clarify, so for the motion, we would look to have two motions. One motion for this project for the review after final for the addition, and then one motion for the proposed pool.
Because there's two separate applications.
Exactly, yes.
Okay, great. All right, I apologize for being so late, but if you were here earlier, we had a very long first item.
No, not your fault at all. It was drawing the pool man's fault.
So if you could just present what you're doing.
Yes, certainly.
Gonna do.
Basically, what we're looking at doing is adding on this addition here at this end of the house. It's an extra 10 feet, and the reason for doing it is the two bedrooms. We bought this property, and it already had these plans in situ. We liked it, but the owner at the time was going to build this house for a young family, and our family is an adult family. We have a daughter at college in Denver, and we just need to make the two small, what was going to be the children's bedrooms, a little bit bigger to get a closet space, and to give a little bit more room in these two bedrooms. And that's the reason we want to extend this 10 feet. This is currently in build at the moment, and it's halfway through its framing stage.
Okay.
And we thought this is the time to approach changing it.
The east elevation doesn't change at all. It's exactly identical to what it was previously. It's just 10 foot out further. And so the windows...
Correct.
Yeah, so the windows stay exactly the same. The only other addition is to have an exactly matching window, sliding door window, on the south side.
So on the south side, we've gained this door. These two windows are at the moment on the existing building anyway. We're just moving these two windows to here. So the appearance on the east side is exactly the same. From the southern elevation, you gain this door.
Okay, and then on using this site plan, the pool is going to go where?
Certainly. I've got the accurate drawing because the pool designer actually had the pool in this extension, which is the first application.
It's basically going off that corner right there.
So it's going off this corner here. The oak tree of your concern is now exactly to scale.
Good.
It's a single trunk, and from the trunk to the drip line is 9 feet. And from the drip line to the house here is 65 feet, and the closest point here actually works at about 35 feet. So the critical root line here, even if we come 10 foot off the drip line, we are well away from it. It's not a large pool, it's only 4 foot 6 deep. It's on a level site, and it's just to give us a cooler place up on the mountain, especially after the heat we've had in the last couple of weeks.
All right. I guess some just basic questions that may help all of us. Is there a requirement to have a fence around this pool?
Yes, there is.
And where would that fence go?
The proposed line for the fence is actually off this deck. This is a deck off the front of the house. So there would be a fence line come down here and join on with this 8-foot existing chain link fence, which is a non-climb 8-foot fence, boundary fence. And the other place to take it is from the corner of the house here and come down this area and adjoin the fence back here. So the whole backyard becomes a backyard.
And that fence would be what kind of fence?
That would be a 5-foot non-climb
chain link fence?
Chain link fence. Black chain link fence.
Okay, and then the walking surface, is there any kind of, what's the surface around this pool?
The surface, there's proposed to have a 3-foot pathway around the edge of the pool.
Made of what material?
And that will be made of Cherokee sandstone.
Okay. And then walking between this deck and that area, is there?
This deck, with the remodel, what will actually happen, these steps go away. And these steps here, because what we'd like to do is to continue this deck on so it comes round. The house actually has a large wing overhang at the moment that comes here. It's a radius. And we want to continue that radius that way. So these steps basically are disappearing.
Okay. And then do you have a floor plan showing the addition?
Yeah.
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
Yes.
So there is a window on this side.
Yes.
The north elevation has a window.
So we're just moving the north elevation
The
window
same
as
as
well.
this.
No, I understand that. I
Yeah.
just didn't know whether there's windows there. All right.
And basically it supplies, this is the room at the moment, and as you can see it is quite tight and there's no closet space. So here we can make this a better room and provide this closet space, and then this bedroom here we have this extra space here which we envisage being a desk area.
Okay. Okay. Anything else we need to know?
Nope.
Okay.
That's it.
The chair sees no slips to discuss this project, so I will open and close public comment. And we're now to the board for questions.
No questions?
No questions. Jamie?
Regarding the pool equipment, is there any walls around it?
Yes, the pool equipment, actually what we're proposing with the pool equipment is, as you can see, it's situated over here. What we have at the moment, this is very level ground all around, very level, the whole site. But here, there is actually contours that drop away here. And the idea was to build a semicircular stone wall with a roof over it, thus totally unseen and enclosed, and therefore it was unobtrusive to us from the pool and also to anybody else. And say our neighbours to the south, he has a barn and he's 350 feet away to the south. He's totally landscaped his property with pepper trees and visually cannot see us, and we can only see the top of his barn roof.
I think you're supposed to leave one end open.
Yes. Yeah. And what we're proposing was that it would be the lower end, because this would actually have to be a retaining wall because it's going to be underground or sub-ground level, and put a concrete slab, reinforced concrete slab roof over it, so that we can just take the planting right over the top of it so it's totally hidden.
And what was the pattern of the hardscape coming around to the pool?
Yes, what was going to happen here is this deck would continue on to this corner. What we have here at the moment, this is all hardscape. This is proposed concrete deck, and that's already in the plan and build. And this area here would be a green area. So this is a green area here coming to the pool.
So you just have stepping stones or something? from
Yes,
the hardscape to-
probably stepping stones from the steps across to the hardscape around the pool, so that you're not literally walking wet on grass, and so you can come with clean feet from the pool area to the deck, yes. But we want it to be as soft as possible.
Okay.
Yes. Do you have a proposed square footage for your new lawn area?
No, we do not at this precise moment. It was
always going to be lawn there.
This was always going to be lawn that was on the existing plans that were passed.
I don't think there's any changes there.
But we are losing some lawn because of the pool.
Yeah. Okay.
The pool is actually cutting into the original lawn area.
Thank you.
I have a question,
Bernie?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. So are you on the city water here?
Yes, we are. But we also have a well. So we have two sources of water, basically.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Jimmer. Question?
So I guess you'll have to provide details of the wall and the concrete roof.
That will have to be done by the engineer, a structural detail for that wall, yes.
So do you think he needs to come back?
Well, let's leave that for comments, so let's ask questions now. Somebody, your thing is not on. Any further questions? Sewing. Is it working? There, it's on. Okay, thank you. So Michelle, just to remind everybody, we've got two motions. One's for the pool, and one is for the addition itself. Okay. Was there an approved landscape plan for this project?
Yes.
Okay. And we don't have a copy of that.
Not here in front of me today, I think.
We have one. It's in the file. Okay. All right. That was my only question. We go to comments. Brian.
I love, I appreciate your, I'm just a little frustrated that the drawings are not complete again. I mean, now you're telling us that this is going to be gone. And
This I gained historically from the pool designer. Maybe the mistake I made, like the chap said, we went to a pool company to build a swimming pool, and he said, oh yes, we'll take care of everything. And it became apparent that he didn't take care of everything, and I came to a meeting this morning which was quite embarrassing for me. He'd taken this tree just off his computer, and he'd showed a double trunk with a canopy A size.
So maybe we can help you with this. Other comments?
That was one of my, I was wondering why.
No, I don't have any comments.
No, I don't have.
Okay, let me see if we can help you do this.
Much appreciated.
We need to have a drawing that we can approve that's reflective of actually what's going to happen. So when it goes in the file and the building inspector goes up there, he can pull out the drawing and say, this is what was approved by the board, He looks at it and says, did they build it that way? And if they didn't, then somebody's going to come back and say they didn't, et cetera. So I think if you want to make a list, here's what this guy has to provide, or your landscape architect, or
No, I
whatever.
totally understand where you're coming from.
Yeah.
This
So-
basically was slightly subject to what happened here.
So we're going to make a motion for this piece. Correct. Okay? That's a separate action. We're going to make a motion for this piece. This piece appears to have all sufficient amount of drawings. But that piece that gets attached to this set of drawings for your pool needs to have the following. It needs to have a plan of the hardscape around the pool. Materials, another materials identified, if it's certain kind of sandstone, what it is, what the pattern of the sandstone ought to be, and if it's 3 feet out, that ought to be dimensioned, and how far around. We need to know what this actually is going to look like. That stairs is not going to be there anymore.
Correct.
Now, I understand what you were saying.
Yeah.
So this drawing has to show those stairs going away.
Correct.
The way they typically would show that, they would dash this in and a little note saying stairs not to be included.
Okay.
Then you would show the extension of your concrete, and then you would show whatever landscaping got changed. So in other words, the approved lawn got to this edge, we're going to take out this piece of lawn. That needs to be described on the drawings via picture and notes.
If I was to use this plan in conjunction with the existing plans that are approved, I could
probably
place
get all
this
this- yeah,
on
you
the
can get
top
all-
of it.
Right.
Exactly.
And
Get
I
all
could
that
bring the
information.
conceptual photograph in so that you can actually see
Then we'd have a
exactly
document
what
of what's there.
Correct.
The other part of that is you would have that drawn up, so we know a section through it.
Yeah.
So how high it is,
Right.
what the roof looks like, what's the materials, et cetera. How far away, dimension it, how far away it is from some known location. And a description of how it works, where the vent stack is going to go through the roof, because those things have to be vented. And then also the site plan showing the fence location, where you may have any gates to come in and out, and a description of the fence. If you can bring that all the way back, I think, Brian, it could just come back to
Consent.
you.
Yep.
Okay.
You could say, yep, looks like all the information is there, we're done. So if you can do that, then you're home.
All things are achievable
But
once I
this
knew
is
where we
a
were.
separate application, so...
Right,
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, right.
Yes, yes.
Okay, so,
That goes to consent.
but hopefully you can coordinate both drawings, so when the inspector's out there, he's looking at both drawings going, okay, that kind of makes sense. I know where the pool is in relationship to where
Oh, I know Brian will jump on me if he can't.
Okay, so the chair would then entertain the first motion, a motion consideration of the proposed 10-foot, 6-inch addition to the east side of the current house, which is
I'd
already
like to make a motion
Okay.
to approve the addition to the east end of the house, which was 10 feet 6 inches. That's one motion.
Let's just act on that motion.
Okay. It does not cause any problem with the neighborhood. We feel like it'll be fine.
All right, so that's the motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor to approve the addition. Is there any further discussion? Chair calls for the question. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? So carried. Okay, now let's go to a
And I'll
motion
make a
for the pool.
second motion, emotion, is that you come back to consent when you're ready and provide details for the pool equipment and the retaining wall, a section with all the appropriate labeling, that you show on your site plan the hardscape, the existing approved hardscape, and how its relationship to the pool, how you're going to get to the pool from there. You show the fence location with the criteria for that it needs for the pool, and the description of that.
Okay.
I
Is
just
that-
have
is that clear?
one. Yeah, I just have one question.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
then, do I just take all the building and the energy calculations next and apply for building consent on this? Do I have to do anything more here?
You're ready to get a permit for the addition.
Yeah, so you can go to the building counter.
Yeah.
Go to the building counter now.
Thank you.
Okay, so there is a motion on the floor to approve the pool with conditions to bring it back to the consent calendar when the applicant is ready to get the final on the pool. So that is the motion on the floor. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
when
ma'am.
they bring back the color, like the cement and all that, that'll be coming back to consent?
Yeah, you
That's
should
fine.
confirm that it's either going to match the existing or it's going to be
Right.
whatever color.
Okay,
So that
correct.
should be on the drawings.
Yep.
Correct. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Fine.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Chair calls for the question. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? So carried. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much.
Okay.
Who seconded?
You second it.
I'll second.
Sorry.
Do I get to take any of these contracts?
She
Yeah.
needs one, but you can take the rest of it.
Take that one, I think.
Thank you.
Thank you. I
Addition.
Yeah. So we can have, I'll take these.
All right.
So is Marina Drive next?
Yes. We have 3435 Marina Drive. Mr. Miller, you are excused. Jaime is Jamie is excused. Jaime. Would the panel like a short recess? Just because we've been in it for 3 hours? Okay. We're going to recess for 5 minutes for a brief break, and we'll be back. And we're at 3435 Marina Drive. If there's anyone in the audience wishing to speak to this item, if you make sure you fill out a gold form, staff will hand that to us. This project was last seen on August 12th of this year. And at that meeting, the following motion was made to continue to the full board. 1, reconsider the orientation of the second floor. 2, if a second floor deck is proposed, reconsider the location in conjunction with the restudy of the second floor. And if an exterior staircase is proposed, consider relocation to the interior of the site and to preserve the privacy of the adjacent neighbors. 3, consider a different treatment of the entry court walls in terms of openness. 4, study the chimney on the second floor deck. The board is not supportive of the current approach. 5, provide the longitudinal site sections to understand the site grading in context to the proposed building and view elements from both the public streets. 6, consider how to treat the interior staircase and interior foyer volume as it relates to the second floor orientation. 7, reduce the total square footage to be closer to 85% FAR guidelines. The action was taken on a motion by Sweeney, seconded by Bernstein. It was a 5-0 vote. Miller and Pierce had to step down. Please introduce yourself.
My name is Paul Zink, and I'm the architect for this project.
Chris Gilliland, landscape architect.
Okay, and if you could share with us how you address those 7 items, please.
Sure. I just turned in new drawings that I brought today was a rendered elevation, a site section, and then the landscape plan. I'm going to start by going to the site plan, which also incorporates the roof plan to show you how the changes that were made. After hearing the meeting, we went and talked to our adjacent neighbors, and we listened to the comment that the board made about taking the second story that was oriented this direction and switching the orientation to this direction, opening up this section. So you can see the dashed line of what was our second floor and what was our second floor, and now it's gone this direction. When I met with our adjacent neighbor next door, one of her concerns was removing the stairs and making this deck smaller. The deck was here, the deck is now smaller here, and the staircase has been removed. When I met with the neighbor, this is the presentation that I showed her. I had a bump right over here, and even though it doesn't pertain to her too much, she made the comment that if I have some neighbors up here that are worried about their view, their private view towards the ocean, anything that I can do to open up between their second story and our second story would be appreciated. And she made reference how she's been trimming her trees and keeping them to a height of 15 feet in this area for their benefit. So one of the changes that I made since meeting with her was I pulled the whole second floor back right over to here, so this is all one line. This element of the second floor is a 9-foot plate. This is where the stairs are located. It is an 8-foot plate, and this is where the closet and the master bath is located, and this is a 7-foot plate. So when you look at it in elevation, you can see a stair stepping between the 7-foot, 8-foot, and then 9-foot. So even though this is the stair tower per se, its ridge is not higher than the actual ridge of the house. One I want to point out is the ridge here is at 123. Here's our existing contour at 96. So right here, this element going perpendicular to the primary view is 27 feet from the actual grade. It's 25 feet from our finished floor.
Excuse me, just before you leave that, just to make sure we understand. So that window is where on the plan?
That window, let me move your, is right here.
In relationship to that plan?
This plan has since changed, but this is the window, and it was the stairs.
Thank you.
So if you don't mind, I'll actually go to the floor plan now. So where the second floor occurs, you can see where the stairs happening, starting here and working my way down. This is the large picture window looking that direction, so when you're at the landing, it's the power shot, and these are 2 smaller windows. This has the 8-foot plate, and it'll have a certain ceiling. This has the 7-foot plate, and this has the 9-foot plate with the view going out. On the first floor, you can see the dotted line of where we pulled the house back, and we brought it in just a little bit here, and wherever I can squeeze, I squeezed. We took out 150 square feet. Of that, 40 square feet off the second floor. So the second floor is now only 810 square feet. The FAR is 103% of the allowable, but we did do reductions in moving the stair around and the interior space. Site section-wise, I took a section actually through this portion of the house because I wanted to get this volume and see this in profile. Here is, we took the section, actually it's in reverse, looking that direction. So I'm going through the kitchen, seeing the loggia, and then I zigzagged and I went through the pool at this end. The pool actually is level. Then I have these stairs that go down on each side that follow the existing grades. We are adding about 30 inches of fill at this end, and we are cutting about 18 inches at this end. When we come down here, our grading plan from where the road occurs, we are dropping down 1 foot into the motor court, and that created this element. Our finished floor is at 98, and it's not 97 is the contour that weaves right into here. And as we all know, that we have to have the finished floor 8 inches above the dirt line. So that's how that came through. The site section, the way that's working. The pool looks like it's elevated out of the ground, but the site stairs go on each side, and we have a planter at the back, and then we have a site wall, and then there's this concrete drainage thing on our site, and then there's the road. So Marina Drive and Cliff Drive. So we reconsidered the orientation of the second floor. That was advice that we took. We'd reduced the second floor as well as getting rid of the stairs, exactly. For the front courtyard, we maintained this at a 5-foot plate height. The 5-foot top of wall. The model actually showed how we were creating a compound and how the wrought iron rail came over here and the wrought iron rail came here. So it framed the house as a setting or a destination, and then we had transparency on each side. We actually reduced the amount of chimneys. We got rid of the chimney that was in the upstairs master bedroom, so we didn't have that extra chimney. We got rid of the chimney that was in the exterior deck with the barbecue unit, and we were a little wet bar. We got rid of all of that, all those elements. This chimney, and it's on the first floor, is 10 feet away, so it's going to be sized in proportion to the 1-story element that happens here. Go back to that ridge. On the site plan itself, I actually show the ridge heights in relationship to the contours. So this contour is 96, and this, let's just call it 13. The ridge is at 13 feet. So that makes this ridge 13 and 4 is 17 feet. This from existing grade coming across here. This element here, this is going to be at 27 feet. I already went through that. But what I wanted to point out was the number of chimneys. We now only have these 2 chimneys in place, reduction, and then how this is basically a 1-story element here. Longitudinal section, which you saw. Interior staircase, we actually removed it, and we changed the floor plan of the interior so that our foyer and dining room all line up together. The staircase that was here moved over to here, and that one hallway that we had as a dedicated volume is all gone. So this ridge right here is at, if this is at 17, this will be at 18, and this is at 17 feet. So we brought down that whole section, so our 2-story element is right here now. And reduced the square footage, which we did. Landscape plan. Wanted to go over a couple of points with that, changes that we've incorporated.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Let's see, the changes that were made, it's basically the concept is the same. Low water use wherever possible. They do want an activity area out here by the pool with the lawn. We've kept some field-grown olives in this location with a maximum height at between 16 and 18 feet to retain those views over. Similarly with the citrus over here, we've called out a semi-dwarf version not to exceed 15 feet there to retain those views as well. Other differences in this plan, aside from the minor modifications around the house because of the footprint change, is the pool is no longer that three-edged infinity pool. It'll now have a wall all the way around it. And beyond that, that's the main thing for the changes, yeah.
One thing that I forgot to give to the landscape architect was that we're moving this wall. It's shown on my site plan. We did get a report from Peter Wynn and for the cypress tree, and he said the best thing for us to do is locate this wall at the drip line of the tree, and then he would monitor the construction. So that comes to this point right over here. And then all I'm doing is I'm switching the green from this side of the wall to that side of the wall.
Okay. Is that your presentation?
That'll be my presentation.
Thank you.
One last thing. Thank you. I'm hoping that I can get enough positive comments to get the go-ahead to go on to Planning Commission. There'll be some lead time before I'm actually in front of the Planning Commission, so I will return to the board one more time to get, positive comments before we actually have the hearing. But I at least want to know that we're going in the right direction to proceed with the Planning Commission submittals.
Okay. All right. The chair is going to open public comment period. The first speaker is Ketch Wilkin. If you please come to this microphone. You sit right there, and if you'll state your name and your address, please, for the record. You have 2 minutes to share with us your
My name is Ketch Wilson. I'm at 415 Calle Las Caleras, which is offset this way from that house. It is my lot on which the horse path is and the easement, and it's the source of the view corridor that we have. When I gave that space to the city, it was on my lot. It was an exchange for a road, which I didn't want to have, so we made it into it was a very busy horse path. It still is a very busy horse path. And it was given to the city as an easement so they could put a perpetual walkway through there for the equestrian trail. Now, the assurances I had from the city was that it would be honored and it would be a view corridor and the area would be kept clean so that it would remain as it was. There were no houses there. I didn't expect it would remain that way, but they assured me that there would be views always of the ocean, reasonably so. And when I see this house here with its 2 stories, and I don't know if it still has that concrete wall around it. I can't see from the plans. Can you tell me that?
It's a 5-foot wall in the front, yes.
Okay, because the limitations of the view ordinance, it's 3.5 or 4.5 inch shrubbery in that area where there's the view ordinance. So you have a 5-foot wall there. It's an ugly wall. There are no other walls in the area. There are open fencing, but no wall. I mean, that's ridiculous. And a 2-story house in that area, yes, the neighboring one is 2 stories, but that was built long ago before there was even a single-family place to go to have modifications and review things. That should not have been a 2-story house. A 2-story thing here is still a complete contrary to the area that's there, which is much more rural. We still have a lot of horses and a lot of people walking through there, and that 2-story is just still going to look like some kind of drive-in movie. All it's missing is a projector. So I don't want to have a 2-story building. They have plenty of room. Why can't they put it down below? It's not like they need views. They have a 180-degree view of the ocean anyway.
If you could wrap up.
Yeah, so I am against the 2-story thing completely, and the larger trees in the front, we don't want to see those.
Sir, before you leave, can I ask a question?
Sure.
And I think we may have covered this the last time.
I wasn't
Some
here.
neighbors spoke the last time, but I want to make sure we understand. If I'm on a horse or on this bridleway or wherever it is,
right,
where is that in relationship to this driveway?
Where are we? This is the cul-de-sac.
That's the cul-de-sac, the ocean.
Where's the neighbor?
The ocean is over here. This is Cliff Drive.
The ocean is here.
Yeah.
It's coming down through here.
And your expectation is to be able to sit on a horse and see the ocean?
Oh, to walk.
Walk.
To be able to walk.
Excuse me, would you please sit down? We're going to do this in order.
No,
That
it's
way
not
we don't
just, it's
overcomplicate.
not just a question. It was a lot of walkways in there.
Okay, but the expectation is to be able to see the ocean down this lot.
Not over the building. There's going to be a building there, but certainly that's why we have 30-foot offset setbacks we have arranged there.
But you don't expect to see the ocean through the house?
No, but we don't expect to see a gigantic house either. All the houses are quite small there.
That's my question. Okay, thank you. Let's see, the next speaker is Susan Zalon. Zalon? You could introduce yourself and your address, please, for the record.
Yes, Susan Zalon, 3424 Marina Drive.
Okay.
I have 3 points to make. 4 years ago, when the adjacent house was discussed, the board, the neighbors, and the builder, felt that the one-story house along the ocean front was correct for that area. They were all interested in preserving public views to the ocean and also to the mountains, as it says up there. And Marina Drive is officially recognized, as you know, as an equestrian and pedestrian path with scenic ocean view. So I hope that this board will agree with the same ideas. And if so, please consider that a two-story house is not a fitting addition to this area. Very, very disturbing.
Okay.
That's number one. My second point concerns the gate in front of the house, which we all feel should be a low one to enhance our neighborhood-friendly feeling. We're against walking down, biking along, or pushing baby carriage or horseback riding where every sign of life is hidden behind high fences and gates. You know, we're not Hope Ranch. And the third point concerns the 30-foot view corridor. And I hope that you will take into account that plantings included should be measured from the pedestrian street level at 3 to 4 feet and not from the raised ground level of the property, which brings the plantings way up. Because it's not only equestrian, it's just the people that I mentioned. Every day people are marching through. Okay, and that's about it. And, you know, as far as the bulk and size, it's still way over what it should be.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Next speaker is Ronald Green. If you could introduce yourself and your address, please.
Sure, my name is...
You'd speak into the microphone, please.
Sorry.
All of this is getting recorded. Sorry.
Yeah, my name is Ronald Green. I live on Marina Drive. And speaking for myself and many of our neighbors, we're extremely disappointed that on the basis of one hearing, this board immediately approved a two-story home in spite of the overwhelming negative comment from the neighbors. In fact, I would call it overwhelming. Anyway, as most of us know, the entire 3400 block of Marina Drive is a public pedestrian and equestrian path with a scenic ocean view officially recognized in 1970 by a resolution of the Santa Barbara City Council. This path, as we said, has been used for years on a daily basis by riders, dog walkers, and hikers. I would like to direct your attention to the poster on the wall, which I guess is up there for a purpose, where it says project compatibility analysis based on Santa Barbara Municipal Code City Council regulations. It's particularly number 5. Public views of the ocean and mountains. Does the design of the project respond appropriately to established scenic public vistas? In my opinion, and the opinion of many others in the neighborhood, the design of the project does not respond appropriately to the established scenic public vistas of the ocean and the mountains from Cliffs Drive. By a two-story house with what I can judge is about a 30-foot roof height and an FAR of 106%, which is way above the single-family standard of 85%, even when we have a little token reduction of, 3%. It just fails, in my mind, to respond appropriately to this scenic public vista. Basically, 4 years ago, the single-family design board, and I was here, approved the adjacent single-story house at 3455 Marina Drive. And incidentally, 6 years ago, the ABR approved the house next to it at the 3475 Marina Drive, which is
Kinda
also a
wrap up
single-story
your
house.
2 minutes.
Okay.
Spent.
All we can say is that from the aesthetic point of view, at least, 3455 is one story, 3475 is one story, and we believe that this house should be also one story.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
And to the other speakers, if you agree with the previous speakers, just say so and then provide new information for us, if you would, please. Next speaker is Michael Moore. Introduce yourself and your address, please.
Okay. Good evening. Michael Moore, 414 Sea Ranch Drive. So I sit real close right behind the greens. I do agree with the previous three speakers verbatim. I like to add to the fact that that the finished floor height on this project really be brought down to equal to the median of the low point and high point. I think that's been addressed. I think it's sitting around 98 feet. I think it should be brought down to about 95 feet. Would be great. And also both the other views, like you said, considering from cliff looking up to the hillside, it impacts that with the two-story. So definitely against the two-story. And then with that, keeping it a single story and keeping the ridge height of the roof to approximately around 16, 18 feet. 9 of the 10 homes surrounding this home are all single-story houses in this area. And I was in questioning the FAR went from, what did it go to? 106 to
103.
To 103.
Yes.
And the suggestion was to 80, 85. So,
okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. And our last speaker is Don Santee. Please.
Don Santee. I live at 421 Calais Las Caleras, which is directly behind this property here. The residence just immediately to the west of this house, that was built 4 years ago that we talked about, is a single-story home, but they did lower it about 5 feet. This committee here did, so it's down to about, I think, 17 feet was the finished ridge line on it. And that's just a single-story home. But as we all know, that these guidelines are intended to design homes that are compatible with the surrounding neighborhood and preserve visual resources and promote sustainability. That's right out of the city of Santa Barbara's little website there. And again, that the FAR and all the other homes in this general area is around 85%, except for the last two that have been built, which is right around the 100 to 101%. This one here, we start off at 106, I guess, and now you're down to 103, so it's a marginal decrease. But again, this view corridor that we need to protect, that the proposed vegetation in this 30-foot corridor on the western line and around the whole property needs reduce the potential for normal growth to significantly block adjacent properties and primary scenic views. To ensure the vegetation scale is consistent with the public view and the preservation called for in the coastal plan. And to the east side, with these trees that are 15 feet high, are just going to obscure more of this view corridor. Yes, more of that view corridor. And so if the coastal plan is concerned with the property vegetation obstructing views, and we should also be concerned with the building height obstructing views, which, again, back to this house, should be a single-story home. And again, the last thing is the property walls and fences. It should be low enough not to obstruct the pedestrians viewing from the view corridor.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Any further correspondence, staff? Any letters or anything?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just wanted to acknowledge a letter received from the adjacent property owners, Russ and Pam Strobel, at 3455 Marina Drive, the residents immediately to the west.
You also got emailed today a letter from Sandy Sofield from her and her husband who live adjacent. It's in your inbox. These are the two immediate adjacent neighbors.
Okay. I will pass that to our board members. And was that letter in support or in opposition, or what was the general
This
gist of the
letter does not state either support or opposition. It mostly seems to just clarify some concerns addressed at prior
The last
hearings.
paragraph says it's in support.
Maybe you can pass it down and we can take a quick glance at it. Thank you. Okay.
All right, the other one definitely says she's in support.
All right, thank you. Having no further speaker slips and letters are been introduced, the chair will close the public comment period. We're back now to the board for questions. Lisa?
Yes.
Please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On your landscape plan, can you identify the native shrubs and ground covers that you'll be using so we can know that they're going to be staying under the required height necessary to maintain the view corridor?
Well, I don't have exact species now. That would come during the construction documents phase, but if I had to guess, I would assume I'd be using things like Ceanothus Yankee Point and other Ceanothus ground covers, maybe some of the Manzanita ground covers, or the Coyote Brush ground cover, the Pigeon Point, grasses potentially. Are you talking about you're looking at within the?
Yeah.
Or just along that whole side?
Well, if you could just identify those
Yeah, that's.
the next time around, that'd be.
Yeah, absolutely. And
I can add to that the landscaping that we're going to be planting here is going to be similar to the landscaping that's on the adjacent 30-foot easement, and that it was already approved with a height of not to exceed 4 feet for the first half measured from existing grade, and then the back half was measured not to exceed 6 feet from existing grade, and that there was a plant list put together that this property followed as part of their working drawings, and so we would follow the same planting palette.
Thank you.
Okay. Bernie?
No questions.
Jim, questions?
Yeah, Paul, can you show us where you're raising the grade?
We're from about
This area here?
this zone here, we're being raised. The maximum point is 30 inches here, about 24 inches here, and we're cutting it back here, and then there's a stone retaining wall. It's going to be back here.
So
you're shaving that back?
Yeah, and we're actually cutting this part of the parking lot down by a foot because we have a 1 foot drop to get into the motor court, and then we go up to the finished floor. I can show you on the site plan. Here's 95, here's 96, and our finished floor is 98. So 96 comes to about right here. And if I'm at 98, all of this is 2 feet worth of fill coming to this point. Here's 97, which I basically establish as my motor court. Then I have stairs going up to the front door. And then right over here, this 97.5 is actually the garage. That needs to slide over here, and that gets into the garage area. And the motor court itself is at 97.
Okay. Questions? Any other questions? Did we see last time a picture of what that gate looks like?
I might have I think I had a hand-drawn elevation of this. If I didn't show it to you, I had it in my pocket but didn't pull it out.
Okay. So is that an open?
It'll be an open wrought iron kind of thing.
Gate? Okay. And how high?
If the wall is at 5, we would start at 5 and swoop up and come down with railing.
Okay. second floor. Most of these are going to be comments. Can we go to your site section?
Yeah, you can pull that over.
So in terms of elevation of this house, that represents existing grade, is that what
That is correct.
Okay. So there are a couple of places where we're going to go up 24 inches, but there's
Yes.
other places where you're actually cutting it down a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're not raising it up on a plinth. It turns out that on this side, as you drop towards Cliff Drive, that does create at least this area around the pool.
This area at the pool is the raised section, and then I have the stairs that cascade down, and then the pool comes out. Originally, it was a zero edge.
And then as I'm looking at this section, this is the second floor piece. That window is illustrative of on your elevations.
Oh,
Where is that?
I didn't go over the elevation sheet. You were right over here.
Okay,
This is
so
the
that's
stair
not-
window, and this is in the master bedroom corner.
Okay. Okay. I think that answers my question, and I believe, let me just quickly go through this list again. You addressed all 7 items we asked you to look at last time. Okay, and I believe you did share where you attempted to reduce the square footage, correct?
Add the dotted line on the
Right.
plan, but 40 square feet did come off the second floor.
Okay. All right. Anybody further questions?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
when they calculate the square footage, and then when they have all these extra little architectural features like this and that, how does that get into anything? Or is that just an added thing?
You want to answer, shall
No,
I?
you-
If I go to the site plan, this is a weird thing that's part of our code, and I didn't write the code, but I take advantage of it. I'm sorry to use those words. This covered porch is not part of the FAR calculations because it's open air and it's covered. If it was on the second floor, the single-family design board counted if it was covered. So like this porch here, this porch here, this porch, and this element, which are one-story shed roofs to create architectural interest, are not part of the FAR. The FAR is just the actual conditioned square footage. The stairs only count once, and so you get to where this landing is, and then I had to count the landing and that little pop-out thing.
Okay.
Does it sound reasonable?
Thank you.
So just to remind the board, this is here for second concept review. It's comments only. It still has to go to the Planning Commission for coastal development permit, still require an environmental assessment. And just to be clear for those in the audience, the board has not approved anything. We haven't approved the second floor. We haven't approved these plans. The first meeting was our comments. We requested the applicant to go back and study several things. We still reserve the right to make some more comments. To the board, we have a choice today. We can continue with comments. We can request the applicant to come back to us before he goes on to Planning Commission to respond to those comments. Or we can make comments and agree to send him on to the Planning Commission. So that's kind of, whoever makes the motion, that's kind of the choices we have. So with that, let's go to comments. Jim, do you have comments, please?
Mr. Chair and board members.
I'm sorry.
Before you make comments, I just want to clarify, if the board should find this project ready to proceed to Planning Commission, just to make, I would recommend that first, that that you're acceptable, find the architecture as proposed today acceptable.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, if not, request it to come back to full board with changes. And just to state very clearly in the motion whether or not a second story is supportable or not.
Okay. Thank you. Jim?
Yeah, I think that, I think the second floor fits in very well when you rotated it. And
Still
I think the second floor fits in very well. It's such a small portion, of the overall first floor. I think the 106 FAR,
103.
I think the way the layout, the way it is on site, the way you've broken it up with the motor court in the front and the terrace in the back, I think 103 is fine for this, for this site.
Okay. Bernie.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. I cannot make the findings to support this project. I'm looking at my findings. I'm looking at compatibility for size, bulk, and scale appropriate to the site and neighborhood. I'm looking at good neighbor guidelines. I think there's a lot of other options available. It's a vacant parcel. It doesn't have to be so big, and it doesn't have to even, I might be willing to consider a partial, maybe even smaller piece of a second story, but I just think there's too many other ways with this wonderful architect and the blank slate to follow our guidelines more stringently.
Okay.
Thank you.
Lisa?
I echo what my colleague beside me said about possibly finding another creative solution to reduce the size. I think the architecture is appropriate, and even the placement of the second story would fit in with what we're doing. But I'd like to see if you could lower the finished floor height more to accommodate what you're trying to do. Whether, I don't have a comment as far as whether or not I can support the project.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to go to my comments. I'm going to pull out my little sketch that I shared with you last time. And this project's still not there. This project, this particular house and its Spanish-style architecture might be appropriate in San Juan Capistrano, or Dana Point, or Mission Viejo, but I don't believe it's appropriate here in Santa Barbara. I can appreciate that the client wants to do Spanish architecture, but I believe that this is a disappointing way to portray it in general. I think that the shape of this house needs to be reconsidered. That's the only way I could even think about supporting a second floor configuration. I know you attempted to switch your second floor, but when I was doing this diagram, I was really talking about that's the footprint of the entire house, not across the whole lot. I think it's a very unfortunate solution. I think the compound and the motor court and the gate, wall, etc., is something that might be appropriate in Montecito. Certainly not appropriate to this neighborhood based on the testimony we received from many of the neighbors. The deck and the loggia, the configuration, I could see how there could be an appropriate piece of Spanish architecture that could do that. Right now, it's not there. We talk about size, scale, and bulk. The size of this house is now at 103%. I'm not saying it has to be at 85%. That may not be probably appropriate for the size of this property. But at 103%, I still think it's too large. The bulk is it still reads as a very bulky piece of Spanish architecture. It doesn't read as a piece of elegant Spanish architecture that one would see, and we look at our predecessors, George Washington Smith, Wallace Neff, Luda Maria Riggs, and some of the other ones that did fine Spanish architecture in this community. In terms of the scale, it's ostentatious. It reads ostentatious. It doesn't read friendly to the pedestrian, to the scale of the human person. And I think that that's what I'm hearing from the neighborhood, is that their perception of their neighborhood is that the current homes read to the scale of their neighborhood. And I don't think you're there yet. So I'm going to be one that will request that you come back and show us a different design. So, any further comments? Would someone like to make a motion?
Okay, I'll try a motion, Mr. Chair. I move to continue the project for however many weeks.
Indefinite.
Indefinite continuance to return to the full board, and taking into account the comments that were made that included the size, the two-story elements, the other comments that are already on the record. I don't know, do I need to repeat everything? I didn't really take any good
Yeah, it has to be an
notes.
action motion.
Okay.
So it's just comments, you don't read all of it. all of it.
Okay, well, help me out, you guys. To the return with the following comments: bring the square footage down. We appreciate some of the changes that were made, including the removal of the exterior staircase and the second floor deck, but it still doesn't seem to fit our guidelines. It needs to be more carefully crafted so that it doesn't appear to be ostentatious. I need help. Help me. Fred?
Okay. This is how we're all going to have to craft this motion. So that we would request that the designer and the applicant reconsider the shape of the house to address the size, scale, and bulk, that the size be reduced below 103%. The board doesn't feel that it needs to be at 85%, but it's still too large. In terms of the bulk, the building still reads as a massive, bulky building, that a reciting of the plan would address some of that in relationship to the landscape, so that maybe a little side note, this shouldn't be part of the motion, but one of your tool sets in your toolkit as architects, I would recommend when you come back to us that you show us not only drawings that show the building, but show the building in relationship to the landscape. Landscaping and the architecture, landscape architecture and landscaping are part of the whole element. They're together. We want to see what this house will look like when all of those trees have matured, so that on the drawing, you're depicting trees that look like the trees you're specifying. So if they're a palm tree, they ought to look similar to a palm tree. If they're a shade tree, et cetera. So I'm just suggesting that's a way to be able to tell your story. So that in terms of bulk, we want to see the bulk modified, and that we certainly would like to see a different approach to the walling of the motor court and the gate. We'd like to see some drawings of what that would look like in relationship to the building and in relationship to how it's read from the street. So the chair would suggest that to the motioner, if that's acceptable.
Okay, I'll accept that. Also, I'd like to throw something else in and see if it's supportable.
You're making the motion, so.
Which is, we'd like to see, if it's going to continue to try to be so big, we'd like to see the FARs of the other two houses and any other immediate houses in the area.
We turned in the 20
That was
closest
already-
homes.
that's
I don't
already been-
remember what, I just don't
We
remember.
can ask staff to bring that back so
Okay,
that we have
just bring that back, but we would appreciate it if it could come down, and you said not necessarily to 85%, but somewhere closer down toward that.
So that's kind of the motion. Does everybody understand? Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second that.
Okay. Any further discussion?
She wants to see some.
Michelle?
Just a question and maybe a suggestion to make to the applicant, if they are willing to hear this or not, but maybe the board should consider making a more specific comment whether or not it should be 1 or 2 stories. or whether you're willing to continue to review another second-story design.
Maker of the motion. How do
That's
you
a
want to do it?
good question.
Actually, if we pull out the 20 closest homes on that list, is with how many two stories are within the 20 closest
I
homes?
understand, but that's not what we're discussing here. What's your feeling?
I think that we, in all fairness, if it's smaller and if it's only a partial second story, possibly it could meet our guidelines, but I don't really know.
Depending on how it's situated.
I think my comment was if they can reconfigure this footprint, I could support some small second floor element, but it can't be like it is, where it traverses the whole width of the lot.
I agree.
So
Okay.
that would be, if that's acceptable to your motion.
So it sounds like you just leave it open for design.
We want to give the opportunity to the applicant to reconsider the shape of the house and bring it back, and then we can look at what a potential second floor might look like. So I think that's the
Okay.
essence of the motion. Okay, seconder agreed? Okay, further discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? So carried. So we'll see you in the near future. Thank you.
Fred, your side comment about the landscape.
Right. Oh, I'm sorry. Do we have any? Excuse me. Do we have any more items? Okay. Last item. The chair calls the meeting to a close. Thank you.